Welcome to My Watches with Ben. Today's video is the first in a 6-video series on the wristwatch type of dive watch. This first video will lay the groundwork, and then the bulk of the video focuses on the price range of $0 to $330, which I call budget. So there's budget dive watches. What is the best? If you saw my 6-hour field watch video, at first I intended to make this video the same way. I was like, I'll just do the same thing with dive watches. But then I found out there's like a ton more dive watches on the market. The field watch video had 300 watches. This one has 633. So I quickly realized, like once I started talking through some of this stuff, I quickly realized this is going to be so much longer. It might be more than twice as long because frankly the dive watches are more interesting. The dive watch market is a little bit more refined, more competitive, much more watches in it. Anyway, long story short, it was going to top 10 hours. I wasn't going to put up a 12-hour video or whatever on YouTube. I think that's a little crazy. So I broke it into six ones. So there's 5 price categories, video for each one of those. And then the final video is just the top 10 overall. What are the top 10 best watches? All 6 videos are queued up in YouTube now. They're done, they're finished, they're all uploaded. I'm going to release them every couple days at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. That 6th video, that's the top 10 overall, that's all 633 watches. What rose to the top? So I'll show you like here are the top ones from every category, and it'll be like a final showdown process like I did in the past. In this video series, I rate practically all the dive watches I could find. I say practically all because there's a lot of watch brands that have like 10, 20 different models. And it was just too much. I had to rein it in a little bit. So, think of brands like Invicta. I think I've got like 3 or 4 Invictas in here. But if I wanted to, I could have done like 50 Invictas or something. It's ridiculous how many watches Invicta makes. There's other brands that are similar where they just have a very, very large catalog of dive watches with subtle differences. It's not all ones with subtle differences that I didn't include. I couldn't include them all, but 633 is a lot. It's going to be a fair overview. Maybe I missed a few key important watches. Please let me know if I did. I tried to get them all though, all the important watches. So I think this series, which culminates in the top 10 from 633 dive watch, is a fair overview of the dive watch. Today in video number 1, you'll see the top 10 dive watches in the budget category under $330. There's gonna be 125 watches in this video. There's timestamps in the description, so if you only have 15 minutes, please skip ahead. I should have said that from the start. Skip. This is a long video, you can already tell. But yeah, the top 10's at the very end. I've got a lot of stuff to go over. This is like my disclaimer video. All the sort of like methodology and stuff is just going to be in this first video. So if people have issues like why did you do this or that in the subsequent videos, it's in this first one that I lay out the methodology, the philosophy, all that kind of stuff. So yes, use the timestamps. And now for the purpose. Why did I do this? So what's the point? Why is this video in existence? Obviously, the watch type of dive watch is extremely expansive. It's absolutely drowning. It's saturated. We are immersed in options. It's too much to comprehend, even when you just look at small subtypes. So I wanted to see if there were sleepers. Certain watch brands that don't get enough attention, but their specs are just solid. They kind of float to the top. I also wanted to see if more established brands like Rolex, Omega, etc., if they have the specs to back up their popularity, or if they're going to sink to the bottom of that ocean. You will see. I don't want to spoil it for you, so you'll have to wait. For those really fancy luxury brands, that's the 5th video, so you're going to have to wait a while. When you look at the full market, it's frankly just too much to take in. There's too many watches. So I developed a scoring system to rate the watches on a 100-point scale to more objectively determine what's better than another. Because there's so much that goes into it. There's the style, there's just so many elements. I tried to make it more analytical. When you look at that overall market, 633 watches, at least that's what I covered, it's just so overwhelming. The results of my analysis look like a typical bell curve or normal distribution. I've got this bell shape here. The C grade is the peak here. I chose the American grading system to conceptualize it. you know, A plus being the best grade, F being the worst. I put these green and yellow and red here so you can kind of see, okay, these are the quality of the grades. But anyway, you see C is kind of the normal. That's the average, C average. And that's what is expected. When you kind of plot data, you expect it to resemble this shape. But overall, what I found after my analysis is 31% of these things are green, 42% are yellow, and then 26% are red. And so when you think about it that way, do you want a watch that's in the bottom 26%? Do you want a watch, or do you want the ones that are kind of average or above average? You don't want the ones that are at the bottom. So I had to kind of choose a place to cut off. Here's where I recommend and here's where I don't. And I recommend the yellow and the green. Don't recommend the reds. And you'll see that as we go through. Yeah, those reds are not the top performers. So the scoring system was used as a baseline, and I used the scoring system to determine the top 10 in each category. For the final top 10, the 6th video, I bring in the more subjective factors. So the scores are adjusted at the end for brand heritage, for looks and aesthetic, for distinctiveness, that's something I highly prize, for loom impressiveness, and affordability. Oh yeah, I adjusted for affordability at the end. The affordability thing isn't too crazy, but it meant if it was a really expensive watch, it kind of had to excel. So it just kind of evened things out. For example, the Grand Seiko, if you don't factor in affordability at all, there would have been a Grand Seiko in the top 10 list, but the fact that this particular Grand Seiko was $11,600, it bumped it out of the top 10. Once I applied the affordability metric to it, it sorted it a little bit, you know, it brought a little bit more of a balance into the top 10 to where it's not all just super expensive. So that was the point of it. So all this is to say that the top 10 will make logical sense. Don't worry, it's not all just specs and spreadsheets. Like there's some human element to it as well. I'm really excited for you to see the top 10. There's more than one surprise in there. It's really awesome. There's surprises coming. I can't wait for you to see it. It'll just be in 10 days, so hold on tight. In the meantime, you can enjoy seeing all these 633 watches. Today we're going to start off with 125. Yeah, the other purpose of, because this whole section I'm talking about what's the purpose of the video, and the other purpose is just so you can see an absolute ton of dive watches. So if you watch this whole video series, I guarantee you're going to see some stuff you've never seen before. You're going to see new brands, new features, just things you didn't know about dive watches. So there's just a ton of info, a ton of watch info in this video series. Unlike the field watch video, for this series, I set the price ranges so that the whole enchilada would have 5 relatively equal pieces. So each of these categories has around 120 to 130 in that range. It's got that range of quantity of watches. So here are all the price categories. Got my overall distribution. I'll just go through these one by one. This is the overview, but the first one is budget dive watches. There's 125 in this one. I'll show you 125 dive watches. And watches include Citizen, Deep Blue, Scurfa, Islander. You'll also see Invicta and like Chinese, lots of Chinese brands, homage brands under $330. I mean, most Chinese brands are just under $330. So it's this category, you'll see the Chinese ones. I'll be honest, I didn't include a ton. I actually have a bunch of Chinese watches, but I didn't include a ton of them, just a few here and there. If I tried to do all of them, I just think it's a little bit silly. I didn't go crazy on the Chinese watches. In the chart for this budget category, you'll see there's a relatively low number of greens, there's a high number of yellows, and then there's a medium number of reds. Not a lot of top performers under $330, which probably nobody's surprised about. It's too bad I'm starting off the series with like the least impressive version. But I just go in order. It makes most sense to do that. In fact, the hype will build the other way, so you'll get to see they get better and better. That's a little bit that's improved over the Field Watch one, where as it went on, the excitement was waning. They looked prettier, but they were less good Field Watches. Here they actually get better. But anyway, the next category, second video, will be on the affordable dive watch. Price is $330 to $550. That's got watches like Citizen, Seiko. Citizen, Seiko are in a lot of these categories, actually. You've got, nicer Chinese ones like Steel Dive, Zulu, Helsen. What else do we have here? Let me look at my sheet. Orient is in here too. There's an Orient watch or more than one. I don't know. This one's similar to the budget chart. Same ratio here. 1/3, 1/6, 3/6, 2/6 for these green, yellow, red. It's still a lot over on that right side. We'd like it to move over to the left, and it will as we go up. But yeah, still in this price range, $330 to $550. Not that impressive. All right, third video will be on the mid-tier. That's what I'm calling it. But these are dive watches, $550 to $990. I'm sorry, I know mid kind of has a bad connotation. I couldn't think of a better term to use. I don't know. Whatever. It's a mid-tier. In this category, nicer Seikos and Citizens. That quality's getting up here a little bit more. It's not their entry level anymore. I know Citizen and Seiko both go up to like 1,000 or whatever. Well, this goes almost to 1,000. So yeah, these are the nice ones, nice Citizens and Seikos. You've got a bunch of micro brands, Sao, RZE. Stuff that's not on the screen like Marathon and Helsen. Got this cool looking Orient with this crazy crown guards. I thought that was some sort of like bezel lock. It is not. It's just a crown guards. But you'll see that on the third video. As for the chart, it is. It's actually drifting to the left more. We're getting more greens. We're getting fewer reds. So let me see here. The percentage breakdown, there's about 30% that are in this good grade category. 45% in the yellow, so still that's the biggest piece. And then 25% red. So green is higher than red now. Green is 30%, red is 25%. We're moving in the right direction here. The fourth video is on the category I call premium. $990 to $2,200. There are some really solid watches in this category. You're going to start to see more of the well-known brands, such as Doxa. I know that's not their most famous model, but there's the sub 200 Doxa. Certina. Oh, that DS Super is sweet. That is a nice watch. Spoiler. Delma Shell Star. That's actually really nice too. Full lume bezel. Anyway, I'll get into all of that. But you're starting to see nicer watches in this one. You'll see Zen, Squale, just top watches, really. So in the chart, you're going to see a ton more B grades. Yeah, the chart is looking better. Let's go on to the last category. Category 5, fifth watch video, will be on the luxury category. And here's where you're going to see the top heavy hitters. Your Rolex Submariner, Breitling Super Ocean, Omega. My prediction is that this is what people really want to see, is the luxury ones. And it does not disappoint. This category is just, the green is dominant. There's more green than anything else. It's not over 50%. I'm just saying the green category, what is it? Just shy of 50% are in this good grade category in the luxury dive segment. So when you're spending a lot of money, pleasantly surprised. The quality of the watch actually improves when you spend a ton of money on it. That's not the case with field watches, but it was the case with dive watches. There's a ton of good stuff here. It's kind of crazy. It's just page after page. You'll see as I go through it. Page after page is A's and B pluses and all this stuff. Just great watches. Yeah, like I said, Rolex, Omega, Oris, Blancpain, Breitling, Tudor, Grand Seiko. Yeah, I was pleased to see that as it went on, everything's shifting to the left there. It's getting better. You're getting more greens. The budget one, which I'm doing today, it's not as good. There's a whole lot of average here. Ton of average. It's probably the most average of all. As we move up, they start to, it evens out. You're starting, towards the end, you're not even really getting a C spike at all. You're getting, it's just smoothing out. It's moving over to the left there. So, yeah, I was pleased to see all of that. And now for the top 5 best specs to price ratio watches. Within this budget category that goes all the way up to $330, I was like, what are the best that for the price? And so I took the scores and I divided it by the dollars, and that kind of highlighted for me some good value for money. So that's what this is. In number 5, we have the Ratio Freediver 1000. Not the Freediver Professional, the Freediver 1000. That's number 5. Price is $195. It has a depth rating of 1,000 meters, which is more than anybody needs. And my justification for this is the fact that the deepest anyone's gone is 600 something meters. And that's in some crazy suit that prevents you from being crushed. Like, scuba is 300 something meters deepest that anyone's ever gone in history. So 1,000, that's gonna cut it. You never need more than 1,000. But the specs are 81 on this thing. It's kind of big, 46. This has an unusual, it's actually thinner than average for this depth rating. But you get your day date, helium escape valve, which I don't know if I want to go into it yet. It's not really needed unless you're in some sort of chamber and all this stuff. I'll get into the chamber thing later. But yeah, cool option here, Ratio Freediver. In number 4 is the Aragon Evo. It comes in a lot of colors. I thought the red looked super solid. You know, people like that Orient Kamasu or something. The red Orient one, but look at this red Aragon. Oh, that is so striking. Beautiful bezel, full lume bezel, price $165, spec score of 80. This looks like a great choice for the budget-minded. In number 3 is the Aragon Dive Master 42. Oh, the price on this, how did they make money? Sometimes I wonder with Aragon, because these are unique designs. A lot of times it's sales. Maybe these are on sale right now. But yeah, you've got your full lume dial, full lume bezel. It's a 42 millimeter day and date. Orange hand for the minutes. Oh man, those. We'll see as this goes on. I have a soft spot for the orange minute hand. I really like that. I think you even have military time on the outside. Very cool watch. Aragon, like if you're talking about budget watches, good value for money, man, Aragon is on your list, I promise you. And they do make a lot of huge watches. I have this M50, this 50 millimeter Aragon. You'll see it throughout the video. I wear it here and there. They make some massive watches, but they also make some 40s and 42s. So definitely check out Aragon. They have crazy sales sometimes, so I would check them out. You can pick up some watches for an absolute steal. In number 2 is the Deep Blue Diver 1000. This one is also pretty darn famous for being a great option, specs to price, just value for money. You've got the helium for some reason, but yeah, it's a 300 meter dive watch, $150. They make them in 5,000 colors. You know, if you can think of a color of a watch, they probably have that color. Well, I don't know if they have pistachio. That's kind of a rare color. But they have the yellow, for sure. They've got a lot of colors. Full lume bezel. Make sure to check that the specific one you're looking at does have that full lume bezel, because I don't think all their models do. So just check that carefully. I don't know if it's... Yeah, just check that if you're looking at this one. It is very thick. I'll cover that in the full rundown here. But that's my number 2. And in number 1 is the Tandorio Serica homage. The price, $71. Yeah, it's nice to see a watch with solid specs that's under $100. A lot of the under $100 watches just really cut some corners. This one seems like it's really good. It does get extra points for this multi-feature bezel here. So you'll notice I didn't really have the ones that I excluded were a lot of these Chinese ones, Tandorio, Monster, whatever. All these Seiko homages, these sorts of things. They could have been on this list of the top 5 specs to price. I think I've kind of moved on from the homage thing. It doesn't do as much for me as it used to. I kind of appreciate more a watch that is its own thing. Nothing else really looks quite like it. Tandoria kind of gets a pass here with the Serica one because Serica doesn't make a red. If you have a red Serica, Tandoria is the one. Like, I don't think anybody else is doing that. Maybe they will. I don't know, but yeah, that kind of gets a pass. But there you go. There's the top 5 best specs to price ratio watches. All right, now for the philosophy, the overview. So to start off, I need to point out that dive watches are not necessary for diving anymore. They're just not needed. It started out that the dive watch was a necessary tool that was vital to the safety of divers. However, since the advent of the dive computer, decades ago, the watch itself is not necessary for diving. It's cool to wear, and I hear that there's practical benefits to wearing a dive watch while you're diving, but the dive computer and other gadgets are what's actually going to keep you safe while you're diving. So that puts the dive watch in an interesting spot. It has all the history, and it can still be used as a tool, but it's not that serious of an undertaking anymore. Paradoxically, due to technological advancements, modern dive watches are actually much better than the dive watches they used to rely on for diving in prior decades. New watches are breaking records for thinness and depth ratings. In fact, the deepest depth rating I have in this video is 25,000 meters, which is totally insane. As I established, nobody's gone below 600 something. So what are we doing with 25,000? It's kind of crazy. Apparently there's no part of the ocean on planet Earth that actually goes to 25,000 meters deep, but they have the deepest dive watch. The deepest recorded open circuit scuba dive is 332 meters. If you wear a suit that will protect you from being crushed, an atmospheric diving suit, apparently you can go down to 700 meters in one of those things. And according to Wikipedia, in 2006, Chief Navy diver Daniel Jackson set a record of 610 meters in an ADS, atmospheric diving suit. Apparently there's contention with the records, so please don't come after me. All this is to just make the point that 1,000 should be as deep as they go. And yet we have dive watches, tons of dive watches that go way deeper than 1,000. It's kind of crazy. And as you saw in the specs to price ratio portion just now, you can get a 1,000 meter dive watch, which is suitable for saturation diving, for $150, the ratio free diver. So we have really robust capabilities, they're affordable, and there's a humongous selection for a safety tool that is technically obsolete. The tool is obsolete. So where does that put the dive watch? What is the point of this thing? I make the argument that the dive watch is an amalgam of a tool watch and an everyday watch. You don't really need it as a tool, so it should be tooly, but that's not like the top concern. You have to balance everything. So it's important to think through all this stuff, because to try to develop a score system, I wanted to bring to the top ones that were tooly but weren't crazy, that weren't 21 millimeters thick and stuff. It's kind of tough to balance, and I think I got a good balance, but I will show you the full scoring system for people who are interested. Again, that's probably the minority here, but that's why I put the timestamps in. Skip ahead, skip behind, skip every which way you want to go. But yeah, protection and utility are not as big of a factor. Because this dive watch, are you going to the bottom of the ocean? No, you're not. Nobody's doing that. Okay, some guys are doing that. They're awesome. So anyway, when you add the everyday element, there needs to be balance here. How does that manifest in the scoring? Well, for example, in the field watch, which is a pure tool watch in my mind, I think of the field watch as a pure tool watch. In that video, any complication was penalized. Date complication, no matter what it was. Rotating bezel even, because all you needed was the basic time. That's the only point of a field watch, is basic time. Dive watch is looser. It's everyday, it's kind of more for fun. We're not trying to be so serious. So the date complication is actually a bonus. I say you put a date on a dive watch, that's a bonus. I say if your dive watch doesn't have a date, it's like, why are you being so serious? The date is extremely useful. You don't need to know the basic time to save your life when you're with the dive watch, necessarily, So I think complications are totally welcome. They add to the usefulness of the watch that you're going to be wearing every day. A power reserve, for example, is extremely nice on a dive watch. That power reserve tells you that the watch is topped up. Oh, I'm wearing a field watch. Whoops, I should be wearing a dive watch. If the dive watch was only a tool watch, then size and thickness wouldn't matter. You could have the 21 millimeter. You wouldn't care. You know, it's a tool to save your life, so the trade-off is worth it. But no, in the real world, the trade-off is not worth it. You don't want a 20 millimeter watch thick. You don't want a watch that's like a hockey puck. You want it to be a wearable size. So there's a balance. So what I've done is I've gone through the different elements of the dive watch, and I developed a scoring system to rate the watches within the price categories. The system is based solely on specs. You saw the bar chart overview of the results from earlier, and they look pretty normal. Normal statistically, normal distribution. So the bottom line is that the top 10 list at the end, it'll have some watches that have Thule capability. It'll have watches that are really excellent everyday wear. It'll have some that are kind of a mix of both. It's a balance, and that does come through at the end. There's some watches in there that you're like, that's not the ultimate dive watch. No, it's not the ultimate. You know, I think there's like a 200-meter dive watch in the top 10 or something. It's not critical that it be able to go down to 25,000 meters or whatever. So it'll be good. You'll see. So what are the hallmarks of a dive watch? There are more things you could add to this list, but here's a short list. Legibility. The watch should be really easy to read, often with like big hands and indices. There's a timing bezel. That's a hallmark of a dive watch, is having a rotating diving bezel. High water resistance, generally 200 plus is kind of standard, 200 meters and plus. Another hallmark of a dive watch is a bracelet extension. You know, something you can snap out so you can wear it over a wetsuit. Bright colors are appreciated, like reds and yellows and oranges and neon blues and stuff. Crown guards are a hallmark. That's one of the things I think goes into the ISO rating, ISO, International Standards Organization, whatever it stands for. Crown guards and screw down crown, those are standard hallmarks of a dive watch. Visibility in the dark, luminosity. You know, dive watches have the coolest lume of any watch type. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's something in the video. There's lume shots for every single watch. There's at least a lume pattern that will be shown for the minority that I literally could not find a picture. But there's lume shots for these watches, and some of them have much better lume than others. You will see. But yeah, hallmark of a dive watch is good lume. So now that you know my philosophy on this watch type, I will now show you how the sausage is made with a 25,000 meter deep dive into the scoring system. Okay, I put a ton of thought into this scoring system. If you're not an analytical person, just skip ahead. You probably don't want to see all this. Hey, it's Ben from the future. This next segment is 35 minutes long. It was supposed to just be 10. It's actually 35. So unless you're crazy, you should probably skip it. But it's good information. The scoring system took a lot of time to explain. So there's timestamps. Use the timestamps if you need to. Future Ben out. Yeah, the score is based on these categories: protection, utility, and practicality. Protection being like, you don't want the watch to break. Utility being like what the watch actually does for you, its usefulness in fulfilling its purpose. And then the practicality is like the size, you know, having to wear this thing every day, things like that. And there's some overlap between these categories, but try to just break it up like that. And when I was conceptualizing this, like in the field watch video, practicality was only 10%. Here it's 30%. It's a bigger chunk of the total score, is like the size and everything. Let's start up here with the protection. So these 30 points for protection are broken out into these different areas. First one, water intrusion, 12 points. Pretty self-explanatory. It's water resistance. And yeah, I know, I go over, I think when I started this, I thought 92 is as low as it went. So that's minus 12. I found dive watches with a lower water resistance than 92. You know, so those got penalized way worse, obviously. But I thought 92 was as low as it goes with that, the blank pan swatch one that goes down, that has a 92 rating. I thought that was the lowest. Anyway, the way this is all set up, it was based on what I read, that the deepest dive anyone ever did was around 600. So you see 550 to 600, that's a perfect score. You don't need anything deeper than that. It's ridiculous, craziness to go any deeper. So that's perfect. That's how I do this. If it's perfect, it's 0. You get extra credit for like deeper. But at that point, you'll see the trade-off is that they get thicker, and the thickness penalties add up quicker than the water bonuses. So yeah, it's not good. But anyway, 200 is pretty common. You get a -5 for 200 meters. That's still, like, if that was the only thing with the watch, it could still be a 95. So it's not the hugest penalty. You'll see -5 isn't actually that bad. Over the entire watch market, dive watch market, here are the depth ratings. So you'll see 200 is by far the most common. 300 is also very common. And everything else is just less common. So there you go. There's a ton that are over 1,000, which I have already covered is literally just for bragging rights. There's no point in more than 1,000. There's really no point in over 600, let's be honest, but there you go. So that's water resistance. Corrosion is something that could damage your watch. You're in salt water, so corrosion resistance. It's only 3 points that I gave for this, and you know, there's things that just cannot corrode, like gold and platinum. Sapphire does not corrode, these sorts of things. Plastic can have some damage with chemicals and sunlight and that sort of thing. All in all, plastic is really good for water. Salt water and plastic get along pretty darn well. And then you've got ones that will corrode, like bronze, but they're highly, highly resistant. I mean, technically stainless steel is highly corrosion resistant. It's stainless after all. So, but there's some things that are better than stainless steel. This was hard to really get firm numbers. I don't know what the scientific metric is for corrosion resistance. I know it depends on what you're putting it in. If you're putting it in a vat of acid, it's different from putting it into salt water. There's chemistry involved here, and it's way beyond me. I don't know it. But what I was able to find out is that bronze is better than stainless steel, but gold is way better than bronze, for example. So here they are. Here's the corrosion resistance. Okay, damaging the movement, ruining the watch, basically. We've got threats. Oh wait, risk is damage. Mitigation. Here's mitigations to damaging the movement. Screw down crown. Screw down crown protects it from both shocks and water intrusion. So when you have a push-pull crown, just any sort of thing on your kit or whatever, if it gets pulled out accidentally, your watch is ruined. So push-pull crown is bad news. I got a -7 here, all 7 points. Standard screw down crown, you're fine, 0. Crown cover, that's a little bit extra protection. And then locking lever, like a Panerai, it's got this crazy thing that sticks out. That's even better because you can really tell if it's screwed in or not. You can tell if you have that full protection. Screw down crown sometimes is not screwed all the way, so these other things help out. There's more robust ways to protect that crown other than just a screw down crown. Crown guards, I mentioned that's a hallmark of dive watches, so no crown guards, you lose a couple points. Regular crown guard is that's normal, you just get 0 points. Recessed crown is like when it's sort of like crown guards, but it's nothing sticking out from the case. It's just the crown is kind of screwed into the case and the case is kind of enveloping it. Hidden crown, same deal. Crown guard and cover, that's when, in addition to a crown, the guards, there's actually a piece of metal over the end of the crown too, protecting it from impacts this direction. It's crazy, but there's a lot of these that have these covers. Okay, going back to damaging movement, we've got a couple more things. Magnetism and shock resistance. Most automatic movements already have ankle block or those sorts of things that protect the jewel. I'm not calling that anti-shock. Anti-shock, I don't give it credit for just ankle block or DuraShock or whatever these things are. These ones with the jewel. So if it has like a suspension cage thing for the entire movement, yeah, if it has a more robust anti-shock system than just the ankle block, DuraShock, yes, anti-shock bonus. So normal, no protection, you get -3. Anti-shock only is a -1. Anti-magnetism only is -0. Magnetism is a little more important. And the reason why is if your watch gets magnetized, you take it on a dive and it's running fast, that's no good. You want it to be keeping the correct time. So magnetism is a risk, a bad risk. I don't think you can always say it makes it go faster. I think magnetism can cause other problems. The quartz watches are actually susceptible to magnetism as well. It's not just the automatics. Quartz movements can get all messed up from magnets as well. So if it has anti-shock and anti-magnetic technology, that is a +1. Gas release is only applicable to saturation diving because you're under higher pressure in these units, these dry units, like chambers under the water. So this is when you dive, you're a commercial diver, you go down there, you're staying down underwater for long stretches of time. You're sleeping in this dry chamber thing. Helium can get past the gaskets and get into your watch. And when you leave, and this is my best explanation, I am not an expert by any means. When you come out of saturation, when you start your decompression, it can cause the crystal to pop all the way off if that helium is in there, because your dive watch is set up to resist forces pushing on the outside, not forces on the inside pushing out, generally. So the helium escape valve is designed to release those pressures from the inside so it doesn't pop your crystal out. Again, it's only applicable to saturation divers, which, what is it? There's like 2,000 in the entire world. Okay, so you're not a saturation diver. I promise you. Okay. There's going to be some guy who actually does this for a living and who watches this video. God bless you, sir. You are amazing. You need a helium escape valve. Nobody else on the planet does. But anyway, back to my scoring. No helium escape valve is perfect. It's a perfect score to have none of this business. But hey, if you do have it, you get extra credit. This +2 is extra credit, okay? It's not, there's no penalty if you don't have a helium escape valve. There's just extra credit points if you do, okay? Maybe it's just semantics. The helium escape valve gets a higher score, but it's a bonus. It's not there's no penalty. But okay, there are certain watches that are stated to be saturation diving acceptable, but they've been designed in such a way that you don't need a helium escape valve at all. This is what you want. You want a watch that doesn't have a helium escape valve, but yet is suitable for saturation diving. If you're a saturation diver, you want one of these ones that doesn't even have the valve, because that valve is a point that could fail conceivably. So if you just have a watch that's designed to protect that crystal from popping out from some other means, like there's a lip or whatever, that crystal does not come out. You have to totally disassemble the watch to get the crystal. It won't pop out the front. That's the best. That was a lot. Okay, crystal scratching is another element of protection here, and that's based on the material. And we've got sapphire, mineral, and acrylic. Sapphire is the best. I should be zooming in more for you people. Sorry about that. Mineral is a -1. Acrylic is a -2. All right, continuing with the scoring. This is taking longer than 10 minutes. I apologize. Please skip ahead if you're bored here. But okay, for the utility category, we've got dial legibility. This is extremely important. 20 points. Is that the biggest thing? Yeah, that's the most important part of the watch, in my opinion, is the dial legibility. There's a lot that goes into it. So hashes and numerals here is 45% of the 20, which is 9 points. And if there's no indexes at all, oh, I went greater than 9. I thought this was the worst that you could have, is that there's no minute hash marks. So this is when the dial just has the hours indicated. There's just 12 markings, and that's all you get. You don't get anything in between. Panerai is a famous example of this. This does not facilitate precise timekeeping. It's not great. Especially if you want to count seconds, which can be useful in all sorts of scenarios. You can't do it when there's no markings. So this irks me greatly. 9 points off for that. But sometimes there's no indexes at all. This may only be the Vogelkop. That may be the only watch that gets this penalty, but anyway. All 60-minute hashes, that's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. There's 9 points. You're only losing 2 here so all 60-minute hashes means there's a thing for everything. There's no numbers on it. If you have any numbers at all, hey, I say that's pretty sweet. If you have a 12, a 6, a 9. If you have straight up military time, you have all 12, or you have 13 through 24, you've got those numbers. To me, that is ideal. That is the perfect. Now the difference between that and like a Submariner, so a Submariner would get like a -2, whereas maybe more of a Thule watch would get a -0. Not a huge difference. I just think that it is better dial legibility to have some numbers on there. So that gets rewarded. Anyway, the next one, visibility contrast. High contrast is what you want. I like a bright color on a dive watch, so it's my video, so I give it +1 for a bright color. If you have an issue, you can take that up with Jacques Cousteau himself, who wanted there to be a bright color on his dive watch. So take it up with him. No, sometimes they just have these tiny thin hands. That gets -2 points. Low contrast, that's horrible. What you see low contrast with a lot, is you'll see a yellow watch with white indexes and silver hands, or you'll see a white watch with silver hands on it, and it's like, that's not good. Distracting. There's some watches that just have crazy dials and crazy stuff on there where you literally, it's just really hard to tell the time. So that's a -4. Dial legibility. If your indexes fall off, if you have applied indices, that's a penalty. So printed or sandwich dial is no penalty, but applied indices, Rolex Submariner, -2. They're held on with glue, they can fall off. This is sort of a Thule category, the utility. Dial loom, I gave 5 points. I think that's a big portion of the legibility is it loomed well? And good grief, there's 6 categories here. The normal one is loomed indexes and hands. Yeah, there's a lot more to this dive watches than there is with the field watches, so this is a longer segment. But normal, here's your Submariner again. Gets the 0 here. Sometimes they don't have second loom. I think that's a huge miss on a dive watch. It's really important to know that watch is taken away. Not just if you're underwater, but anytime. You want to know your watch is working. That's a great reason to have a second hand. And if it's dark, it's great if that thing's loomed. So yeah, -3 if your second hand isn't loomed. If you only have loomed hands, it's -4. If there's no loom on the watch, -5. I can't remember. I don't know if there's any examples of that actually. But back here to utility, bezel legibility. Part of the dive watch we've already established, one of the hallmarks of the dive watch is the timing bezel. And so bezel is a huge part of this thing. It's 14 out of the 40 utility points. That timing bezel is a huge part of the dive watch. So bezel style is the first thing. If it doesn't have a rotating bezel, I know there's dive watches that are just like, you don't get a timing bezel. Panerai does that, the submersible, or sorry, not the submersible, Panerai Radiomir, or the Luminor, I believe both of those, they don't have a timing bezel. I know there's a rich history of dive watches without the bezel, but I think the bezel's worth 14 points. So if you have no bezel, you get -14, and all the rest of the stuff just doesn't apply. So it's just straight up -14. But otherwise, the bezel style, the normal count up or count down style of bezel is just, that's perfect. That's what the bezel style you want. You don't lose any points for that. Dual time bezel, that's when you have the hours on the bezel instead of the minutes. It's still a great feature. I think it's cool. And yes, you can multiply it by 5 to get the minutes. So you see a 2, it's actually 10. You see a 3, it's actually 15. You can do that, but I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to a dive watch, and I think you should have a dive bezel on a dive watch, not a dual time bezel. So dual time gets -2, still cool, but not all the way. Safety bezel gets a +2. So safety bezel is like, you can't turn it accidentally. Man, my bezels turn on every single dive watch I wear. They turn without me noticing. I think I just bonk my arm into things throughout my everyday life like crazy. So I would love to have a safety bezel, some sort of feature that prevents it from turning unless you press a special button or push it while you turn, like a child safety. Anyway, the best bezel is a multi-feature bezel. You get all kinds of extra credit points. You like dual time and you like elapsed time? Put them together. Two great tastes that go great together. Yeah, there's actually a ton of multi-feature bezel watches. Very interesting. Okay, bezel hashes. So, I'm sorry, my language is imprecise here. So hashes is just like markings, I guess. No hash marks. you only have the pip, for example. No hash marks is -3. When you have hash marks every 5 minutes, so actually a dual time bezel kind of just fits this automatically because you've got 12 markings on the bezel. Hash marks every 5 minutes is equivalent to just like there's 12 major hash marks. If you have a no deco time bezel, that's not as useful in my opinion as a timing bezel. I think the timing bezel is superior. So no deco times. I mean, there's only one that has this example. The bezel seems totally useless in everyday times. This next one here, all hashes until 10, 15, 20, etc. This is a very standard thing that they do. The Submariner, again, this is a Submariner thing. I would guess this is the most common type of bezel, is that you have 15 marks all the way up till 15 minutes. And then from that point on, you've kind of got them every 10 minutes, or you got them every 5 minutes, whatever. But you've got all those 15 in the first 15 minutes. That's okay. I prefer, if you're going to have a timing bezel and you're going to use it, those dots, those hashes, whatever you want to call them, put them around the whole bezel. So no matter how long it's been, if it's been 43 minutes, I can see it's been 43 minutes. I don't have to see that, oh, it's been 40 and some change. It's a watch here. Let's tell the time with it. Anyway, so if you have full minute hashes, perfect score. Bezel numerals. Some watches, the one I'm wearing, have no bezel numerals at all. There's no numerals on here. That's actually kind of annoying sometimes when you're trying to find out what the elapsed time is. So yeah, that's a -3. You have numerals every 15. Blancpain style is -2. Numerals every 10. Submariner style, that's a -1. Numerals every 5. Zin style. Zin, you're my watch company here, because look, they put those numerals every 5 minutes. You have every single minute marked on that thing. You can use that timing bezel and know exactly how much time has elapsed. Bezel lume is worth 4 points. So lume overall is 9 points out of the whole scale. You can argue it's just more important than that, but 9% of the total score is based on the lume. So bezel lume, if there's no lume, you don't get any of those 4 points. If you have the pip only, Submariner style, you only get -3. Rolex Submariner, not perfect. Clearly, we've been seeing it's been getting minuses here and there. Specs-wise, there's better things out there. There's people who lume up the numbers. That's better. So if you have lume major hash marks only, you get a -1. By major hash marks, I mean like the 5, 10, 15, 20 sort of thing. If you have lumed minute marks, but they only go to 15 or 20, and then the rest of the bezel is dark, you get a -1. Full lume is major and minor markings. So this depends on what you had in the previous thing, but if you have everything that you put on there lumed, and you do have some minute markings at some place, you get this. So full lume can be the whole dial has all the minutes, or it can be all the markings till 15 or 20. As long as the lume goes around the full bezel and you've got some minutes involved there, then you get the full lume categorization. Date or no date? Date, you get, date is perfect. A dive watch should have a date, in my opinion. If you don't have a date, you lose 2 points. If you have a lume date, even better. You get 2. There's like maybe 9 watches in this whole video that have a lume date. And the list of those lume date watches is here. If you're a lume date fanatic, here's all the ones I found with a lume date. Complications. Oh, this was already part of complications. Other complications is 4 points. But you'll see I throw that 4 out of the window and I do whatever the heck I want here. So if you have a distracting complication, you lose 4 points. If you have no complications, hey, that's okay. So if you have a date, that date was in a different thing. So you'll see it'll say date and no complications. This should just say no complications beyond date. No complications or no complications in addition to a date is 0. But if you have an additional complication, you get +2. For example, a day. If you have a day date, you get +2 for the date, you get +2 for the day, you get 4 points. That's awesome. 3-hour rotation hand. There's only one watch that has that. It has an extra hand that goes around the dial once per 3-hour period. Pretty cool watch. That gets a +3 for that complication. Bezel lock. A great example of a bezel lock is the Ploprof There are other examples as well, but you can't move the bezel unless you press a little button. That's really cool. Okay, bezel lock and safety bezel are a little different. Safety bezel is like a push and turn. Bezel lock is a push a button thing and turn it. Power reserve is a fantastic complication to have, plus 4 points. You've got 2 useful complications that aren't date complication. You get plus 5. If you have greater than 2, you have many complications, plus 8. Alarm is very good. Now, I established earlier there's no... Oh, I didn't. There's no digital watches in this. How did I not establish that earlier? There's no digital watches in this video. So this is like a mechanical alarm. Or I guess a quartz alarm, but there's no digitals. If you have alarm and decompression times, plus 11. That was one watch that... I think there's just one watch that has that. So the case diameter, I chose over 45. Let me show you some numbers here. For diameter, you know, this range is kind of normal range. Deviate outside this normal range here, 38 through 46, you start to get penalties for going up too big, going too small. But, you know, I'm trying not to take the dive watch as seriously. And so that was the rationale for opening it up, just saying, you know what, dear viewer, you actually love a 45. Who am I to say that 45 is worse than the 40? Who am I to say that? So the bubble, the area of acceptable size is wide, 38 to 45. You know, I don't judge you. The scoring system does not penalize unless you start to go above 45 or below 38. That's the bottom line. Thickness, case thickness, 6 points for thickness. Again, the 6 is a little loose because you see I go all over the place with this. So, and you'll see, like, theoretically, with these percentages, theoretically, you'd see a watch that ticked the boxes and it would get 100. So theoretically, if I was like going outside the bounds of this 6 here, if I was having things getting minus 13 or whatever, plus 4, pluses at all, should make things go above 100. It just didn't work out that way. I learned from the Field Watch one. And the Field Watch one, I was a little bit too... If you did a chart for the average scores for that Field Watch, I think most of them would have been D plus, D minus. Just that's just how it was set up with the way I was doing the points. So I tried to put in pluses on this one just to get that average score up, and it worked. It made everything kind of have a C average. So that's why there's some pluses in here. I just learned, you know, it's more art than science, even though I'm trying to make it look super analytical. It is very analytical. It's just required a little bit of adjustment to get rational results where you have a C average and you don't have a F average or something. But anyway, here are the thicknesses. I think 12 is perfect for a dive watch. 12 is a perfect thickness for a dive watch. And obviously perfection can be improved upon by going thinner than 12. Going above 12, you're losing a point. It's not exactly for every millimeter you lose a point, but anyway, here's the overall thickness. The average thickness, and I know averages are not always the best tool, but literally the average thickness of dive watches is 14. It's 13.99. So you'll see the most common thickness is 13. These are rounded, but yeah, 13 is the most common thickness. So a 12 is great. A 12 is absolutely great. You'll see most of these dive watches, vast majority are 13 and above. And the actual average thickness is 14. Part of practicality is how heavy is this darn watch. So here's densities of materials that are used. I just recycled this from the Field Watch video. So the white gold was the heaviest, the most dense material I had. So that's why that one's 100. Everything else, it's all in relation to that white gold. How is it? So plastic is 6% the density of white gold. Titanium is 23% the density of white gold. These are based on the grams per centimeters cubed that I was able to find on the internet. I know titanium, you know, these kind of alloys can differ and stuff. Ceramic is lighter than steel. Titanium is lighter still than that. Anyway, steel is what most of the watches are made of. It's 41% the density of white gold. So that gets a -2. Your white gold is really great against, and your gold is really great against corrosion, but it is kind of heavy, so you're losing some practicality points there. Accuracy, quartz is the most accurate. Your standard automatic is a -4. If they've adjusted it, and they say that in the product listing, then it's a -3. If it's actually a chronometer, certified chronometer, it's a -2. So those are the points there. Battery changes. From what I understand, I'm not a diver, as I've mentioned, but divers have a ton of equipment and stuff, and it's really obnoxious to try to like keep track of all that stuff. So if your watch, you have to know whether the battery is charged up or not. There's no real way to tell on a watch. It just kind of stops working at some point. So a battery is really not great for a dive watch. Automatic is far preferred. Automatic or spring drive. And I put solar quartz in this category too because the solar quartz doesn't have to be changed. You don't have to change that battery nearly as often as a regular quartz watch. So regular quartz is -6. Solar quartz, you have to change, I don't know what it is. Somebody told me on the last video. I'm so sorry. I didn't remember. It's a capacitor, a flux capacitor or something. It has to be changed every 15 years or something. So yeah, I mean, but that's your service interval on an automatic anyway. So, -0 for -0 for solar quartz, spring drive or automatic, -6 for regular quartz. Finally, we're at the last thing on here. Goodness gracious. Practicality, strap bracelet. Here's your options. There's 5 options. In the middle, the kind of standard thing is you got a silicone strap, rubber, sailcloth, nylon, canvas, steel mesh. Just a standard strap attachment system where if it's too tight, you just change it. You put it in a different hole. You're good. It's a bigger watch. Resin is kind of gross, so that gets a point off. What is so obnoxious is when they take a bracelet, when they slap a bracelet on here, and there's no on-the-fly adjustment, there's no diver's extension, you're just stuck with that size. That's not good. People's wrist sizes fluctuate with heat and stuff. It should be standard here that we have an extension on that bracelet. So yeah, that's -3. You have a bracelet with no extension. Leather strap's also -3. NATO strap or Perlon strap, those both get a +1. It's some kind of pass-through. I guess you could put Zulu in here too. I didn't differentiate NATO from Zulu. This field watch here is technically a Zulu strap. It's just a single pass-through. There's no extra little thing on it. Just call it NATO. It's fine, people. But yeah, NATO or Perlon, you get +1 because if a spring bar breaks, you don't lose the watch. But what's the best for strap bracelet is if you have a bracelet with a dive extension or a glide lock, some kind of on-the-fly toolless adjustment, whatever you want to call it, +2. That's awesome. Get that bracelet on there with a dive extension. That was it. Wow, I did not expect that to take as long as it did. The Field Watch one was 10 minutes. Maybe 11, 12. This was half hour easily. I will put a warning at the beginning that however long this ends up being, hey viewer, don't waste your life listening to the scoring system stuff. Get on with your life, skip ahead. But anyway, I have a few disclaimers too, a few things to wrap up with the scoring system. The entire analysis relied on the product listings being complete, which often they were not, very frustratingly. If the product listing wasn't complete, I would try to find watch reviews that could fill in the gaps. But the biggest pain points were screw down crown. A lot of times they don't say screw down crown or not. Bracelet extension. A lot of times they don't say if there's a bracelet extension, and somehow there is anyway. Come on, guys, advertise it. Thickness. There were more than there should be watches that don't have a thickness measurement in the product listing, and you have to go to a review to find out. Anti-magnetism or anti-shock technologies. A lot of times they don't include that information. Anti-magnetism, advertise that stuff. That's a really sweet feature on your watch. And a lot of times they don't have it on the product listing. Adjusted movement. Sometimes I find out from a video, this company actually, this watch brand, they actually personally adjust, they regulate the watch movement to ensure that it's within a certain tolerance of accuracy. Put that on the product listing, dude. Anyway, so sometimes that's not there. You only find it out through reviews. So, and then the loom pattern. A lot of times these watches don't have loom shots. In retrospect, I wish I had kept track. How many of these did I have to search other places to find a loom shot? It's probably close to half. of these darn watches don't put a lume shot on their product listing. Why is that the case? I did the hard work, so you don't have to. If you watch this video, every single watch I could find a lume shot for, there is a lume shot. So in a lot of these cases, I could find a review that would confirm some of this information that I'm missing. Thickness in particular was a huge challenge because I did have to actually approximate it on a very small number of watches. I would have to take a picture from the side and take the known diameter, put a line there for the bezel, put another line that goes from the base of the watch to the top of the crystal, and use old-fashioned methods, calculator, divide and multiply, to come up with what is that actual thickness. I erred on the side of saying it was thicker if there was some sort of, if the angle wasn't exactly precise, that sort of thing. I know that's not the perfect method, but I didn't know what else to do. It's a critical part of the score. And a lot of times the ones that didn't have the thickness are the really stupid thick ones, the 18 millimeters, the 20 millimeters. I did what I had to do. It's a very small number that I had to do that with, but I thought I should explain that. Another disclaimer, if you like a watch in this video series and you want to go buy it, you might go and find out that it's sold out. That happens a ton with dive watches. They just sell out. The demand is just too crazy high, and you'll have a micro brand that does a run of 400 watches. They sell out in a month, in a few weeks. And that's frustrating as a consumer, but it's just the reality. I included watches that were sold out in the video because I want you to be aware that this watch brand exists and they've got a really cool product, and in the future they may offer this one again. Like, I wouldn't put it in there if I didn't think they were going to offer it in the future again. So with some of these, if you decide you want it, you go look and they're all sold out. Follow them on Instagram or whatever you got to do. Try to get a hold of it. Maybe you can get it secondhand or move on, find something else. But the point is, the market is constantly changing. Just because they sell out doesn't mean they're never going to have it again. They're going to make more, is what my assumption is, and the ones I included. Also, there's a few Kickstarter watches in here. I personally would never do a Kickstarter. I would never support a Kickstarter. I want new companies to come up. So yeah, you should support the Kickstarter. No, just keep in mind it's sort of like gambling because you don't know for sure the watches are going to come through. I think they were funny sometimes. Whatever, however Kickstarter works, look into it before you do that. Do your research. Everything in this video, I did a very, very expansive video series. This is crazy big. It's ridiculous how much I looked at. It's a mile wide, but it's only 30 meters deep. If you want the 300 meter depth rating of review, look for these watches specifically. If there's one that catches your eye or something, do your due diligence before you just buy it. And for goodness sakes, if at all possible, try the watch on. Try it on. There's so many things you'll never know until you try it on. I mean, I've never done that. Every watch I've bought has just been, I see it, I like it, I buy it. I mean, I see it on the internet and I order it. I watch a few videos or whatever. Typically, I watch the reviews after I've already ordered the darn thing. It's a bad habit. Do your due diligence. I've been burned a few times. I shouldn't say burned, but I get the watch, I put it on, and I say, oh, this is kind of too thick. I don't think I would have gotten this if I had known. You can't always tell from the specs. Sometimes they just feel weird. This particular watch has some weird sharp corners here that you could never tell from a video. So you have to go full hands-on to get the full experience. All right, we are here. We finally are made it. You don't know how long this has taken. I mean, you'd have a small slice because the beginning of this video covered so much ground. Finally, I made it. Dive watch is under $330. Budget. Boom. Let's get right into it. Here's that overview of the scores. Not a lot of green. I'll save the top 10 for the end, but otherwise I'm going to start here at the left side and move to the right. Just go through one by one, all 125 watches. Well, all 115, and then I'll show you the top 10 at the end. Let's get going. Oh, here it is. Here's the full view. Kind of grade this out with this granite transparent thing. You can probably tell what some of these are. Anyway, here are the watches. You see we've got greens. We've got 21 greens, a ton of yellows, and we've gotten some reds here. I'll explain this as I go through, but some of these yellows, you see we've got yellow and then we've got red, then we've got yellow again. Some of these yellows are only yellows if you swap out the bracelet. So in that previous slide, these would be in the red category for this chart here. But in practicality, in the real world, if you have one of these watches with a red, if you have this MEC, it's got this bracelet without the extension, you can swap out that bracelet for a silicone strap. You'll see that when we get to it. Let's look at the watches. In 11th place is the Proxima PX1687 Jungle. This is a $219 watch. It's 42 millimeters in diameter and has a water resistance rating of 300 meters. The average thickness for a dive watch of this particular rating, 300 meters, is 13.7. So this one, 14.5, is approximately a millimeter thicker than normal. So this is a little bit thicker. That's unfortunate. It has a day date. It actually has a loomed date. Look at that. The day feature, so many watches do this and it bothers me. They do 10:10 p.m. and their day date is like starting to change. It's halfway in between. That's what you have here. They have a very unique day system here where it's cutouts. You can sort of see Sunday up here, or maybe you can't if you're looking on a phone. It's rotating counterclockwise. So yeah, here's Saturday, here's Sunday. So that day wheel, it just has a green and it's coming over into Sunday. Sunday will show fully once it goes past midnight or whatever. That's cool. That's a unique way to do the day. And of course it gets a bonus useful complication. That day is a 2-point useful complication. Yeah, you see it's got crown guards. It's a steel case, so it's a little bit heavier. That steel bezel will scratch up, so that's unfortunate. It's got full markings on the bezel, so I like that, but just a loom pip. Score of 82. Number 12, we've got the Chimay UDT Military. $77. 42 millimeters and water resistance rating of 300 meters. This is an homage of the CWC, Cabot Watch Company. They have one that looks just like this. The quartz even written on the dial, I think that's part of the CWC. Quartz being more shock resistant than automatic and therefore perhaps better for tactical dive watch. You get this penalty, -6 for having to change a battery. That's not great. Yeah, it's on a NATO strap, very thick. As we just talked about, the average is 13.7, so 15 is pretty darn thick. It's definitely a thick boy. And you've got a NATO on top of this. This is going to be very thick on your wrist. Score of 82. 13th out of 21 good grade watches. It's the Phoebos Leviathan. Oh man, that dial is really, really white and the indexes are really black. This is high contrast. It's got a nice K-shape here. It's reminiscent of the Seiko Samurai a little bit. I guess that Proxima was as well. Interesting. PVD will protect the case from corrosion and scratches. That's really nice. Beautiful matte bezel insert here. Fully loomed. Look at these numbers, how they curve. So many dive watches have numbers that don't curve around the bezel. They're flat and they look super weird. These guys curved the numbers. It looks really nice. This micro brand, I think it's a Singapore company or something like that. It's a step up. But yeah, it's $300, 45 millimeters, 500 meter depth rating. 500 meter depth rating, average thickness is 14.5. So yeah, this is a millimeter thicker than normal. Get your helium escape valve if you're a saturation diver, if you're a professional and you need to be in a chamber and all that. None of us need a helium escape valve. Statistically, none of us. Okay, there's one guy who's going to watch this who actually is a professional, who spends a week in some kind of chamber at the bottom of the ocean, and he needs the helium escape valve. Well, buddy, you're covered with this one. The rest of us don't need it. But yeah, there it is. Got the date there. Score of 81. All right, next is the Tactical Frog FXD. FXD for diving, they say. Watch V4. Okay, so this is an homage to the Tudor FXD. Tudor Pelagos FXD. The Tudor, I think FXD stands for something else. But anyway, $189, 42 millimeter size, 200 meters water resistance. That's really all you need, folks. 200 is pretty darn good. Now, I think I mentioned this before, but if you're going to homage something, make a cool new color that's not in the original. And yes, Tudor does not make a green. And here's that green. I think it looks really good. The green in the middle doesn't match the dial. That bothers me, I'll be honest. I think this should have been black or something if you're gonna not match. But otherwise, you should try to color match. This green is too light. Look at that loom. Oh man, it's actually titanium. Another thing to note about this is it doesn't have spring bars. It's got welded lugs or fixed lug bar. It's a monolithic case that just has like a cutout. So the only strap you can use for this is a pass-through. They show it on this NATO, which according to reviews is very poor quality. So you'd probably want to swap it out for something else. And this is like a Velcro. It's trying to be like the original. And I've seen the pictures. It's not high quality. So I would swap this out probably. Great choice for a green watch if you're looking for one. $189. No date on this thing. Score of 81. And in 15th place is the Ratio Freediver 1000. It's $195. Size of 46, pretty big. Water resistance of 1,000. Got your date, $195, and you get 1,000 meters. You've got printed indices. You've got a lot of nice stuff. This loom actually looks really good. You know, if you're one of these guys that needs that helium escape valve up here, the average thickness for a 1,000-meter dive watch in my entire 633 watch review. Well, actually, there were 44 watches that are 1,000 meters, and the average thickness is 15.7. So this comes under the average by almost a millimeter for this depth rating of 1,000. So this is a good choice, and it is an automatic. Looks good. In 17th place, we have the Revelo Hex Mariner. $314, 42 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. This is one of those Kickstarter watches, clearly modeled after the Submariner, with notable, I would say, improvements over the Submariner. You've got the date window at 6 o'clock. Really cool hexagonal markings here. I guess that's why they call it a Hex Mariner. They even tell you on the dial that it's a Hex Mariner. Crazy. Very cool. These hands look really cool. Like I said, I think it's a Kickstarter, so $314 may just be like the gambling price. When this thing goes live, it might be a lot more. Did I say 17th place? This is 16th place. 200 meter dive watch, average thickness of 13 millimeters, and score of 80. In 17th place is the Proxima Unidive. They make this in purple, pink, yellow, white, blue. Yeah, I forgot to say, the colors are indicated on these charts. Yeah, if we go back, the ratio has black, blue, green, orange, red, yellow, white. I may not remember to say the colors each time, but there you go. Those are the different color options. If you're looking for a pink dive watch, this may be the one for you. It's certainly on the short list. You're not going to see a ton of pink watches, I promise you that. But yeah, this is cool. They have fun. This is like kind of a mod watch, like they take parts they find on AliExpress and kind of slap them all together. You've got kind of a Seiko Samurai case here. Purple hour hand's really cool. You get purple loom on it, green loom, blue loom, all these colors together. Who knows how long the loom's gonna last? Probably not that long, but it'll be really fun when you first charge it up, that's for sure. Lots of loom on there, lots of cool things to look at. It's thick, total score of 80. Next we have the Kronos L6027. I believe this is the one, yes it is, that they actually pressure tested to 2,000 meters. And this one is safe to 2,000 meters, like it withstood that pressure. So it's $239, 44 millimeters in size, and 2,000 meter depth rating, which it actually can withstand. It's got that helium escape valve, they tell you about it. This is kind of tacky. They're copying Rolex, who is also tacky and says helium escape valve on this gigantic silver ring thing on the inside. I don't know, it's part of the look. But yeah, you can see the screw down crown. It's not screwed down here. They hacked the movement so it wouldn't move, because this is a nice time for photos. Very thick, 16.5. Average thickness for a 2,000 meter dive watch is 18.5. Now that's only out of a population of 8. There's only 8 dive watches with a rating of 2,000 in the entire video. Because they'll be above or below. You'll have 2,500, you'll have 3,000, you'll have 1,700, whatever. You've got other ratings around this. There's only 8 with 2,000, and the average thickness is bigger than this by a lot, 18.5. This is 2 millimeters thinner than the average. So Kronos, you're doing well. For $240, this seems like a great deal. Full loom bezel, kind of standard loom on the dial. Great loom pattern here. This looks good. I don't know if it holds up to this or how long the loom lasts, but great pattern at least. Unfortunately, there's no extension on the bracelet. So that's a major downside to this one. Something to be aware of. Total score of 80. And next we've got the Aragon Evo, $165, 40 millimeters in diameter, and 500 meter depth rating. And you've got beautiful loom here. Kind of thin loom on those indexes. That concerns me. Makes me think it's not going to last very long. Because the thickness of the indices does factor in. When you've got these little thin slivers of loom, just in my experience, they don't seem to last very long. If you're one of those professionals who needs the helium thing, here it is for you. No crown guards on this. As is often the case with the full loom bezels here, there's nothing really protecting the loom from getting stained or scratched. So that's just what you get. I mean, some watches do have a sapphire insert on top of the loom to protect it. This one does not. The loom is raw. The loom is outside in the elements here. For 500, this is a great thickness. 13 is actually 1.5 less than the average. So it seems like it's a pretty good thickness for that depth rating. Who needs 500? If you're really concerned about the thickness of your watch, I recommend not trying to find a 500 that meets your thickness needs. Although there is one in the top 10. Oh baby, there's one 500 meter in the top 10 that is nice and thin. But yeah, this one's a 13. That's pretty good for this depth rating, like I said. Score of 80. And next is the Aquatico Dolphin. Comes in a ton of colors. Here's another pink one. If you like pink, Aquatico might be the brand for you. But yeah, it's $299, 38 millimeters. You small-wristed people, here's a 38 for you. 300 meters of depth rating. Printed indices not applied. That's kind of nice. I don't care for the Mercedes thing. I know it irks people. The Mercedes thing irks enthusiasts. It kind of irks me too because I just know it's a Rolex thing. There it is. Loom is unimpressive. It's just kind of your standard dive loom. Nothing to write home about. It's nice they did put a little dot here next to that date window. So a lot of times you just get an empty hole. Most times you get an empty hole. So to have a little dot there, it's nice, in my opinion. Score of 80. Next we have the Ratio Freediver Professional. Like that other Ratio, it comes in 1,000 colors. This is a price of $155, size of 42 millimeters. Nice crown guards here on this, like, what is that, 350 crown? That's kind of interesting, the crown placement there. Sometimes you see it straight on the 4, sometimes you see 420s, 350. Mark from Long Island Watch has done a cool video on why that is. I don't remember exactly why. I think it has to do with the movements, but yeah, there it is. That's where that crown is located. Above average thickness, 15.6 for this depth rating even. You're definitely going to notice this thing. Kind of dated styling with these rounded corners here. It's looking a little more 90s or something. I don't know what decade that would be from, but not necessarily this decade. It's a dated look to it, but you get good specs on this. Great price. Score of 80. And now we're into watches that don't necessarily have a good grade anymore. They have a passing grade. This is a C+ here, the Helm Curaburi. This has a score of 79. Price is $310, size is 43 millimeters, and the water resistance is 300. And you've got your 4 o'clock crown. Huge crown. Good grief, that's like a trash can on the side of the watch. Huge crown. Oh, I love this color combo. I'm a little bit of a Broncos fan, so I would like an orange and blue watch for the Broncos. Definitely would like that. But yeah, this water resistance at 300 meters. No crown guards. That's kind of unfortunate, especially how big that is. Good grief. Whew. Very thick, extremely thick. You can get it on the NATO. I think it maybe comes with a bracelet with no extension or whatever. So in that case, I would, if it comes on a bracelet with no extension and it comes on a NATO, I show you the one with the NATO. It gets a little bit better of a score. Try to always show the watches in their best light, score-wise. But yeah, it's really thick. No date. That really gets me on this one. I think the date would be nice. It says there's applied indices. Sometimes it's like 3D printed or something. I go with what I can see in front of me. These look applied. So it says applied indices. Beautiful loom. Crazy loom. I really like these huge indexes, huge hands. I'm a big fan of that almost cartoonish style of dive watch. So that's cool. What the heck is going on here? 15, 16 and a half, like 16 and a third. So this orange thing goes to 16 and a third. I don't know what the significance of that is. Score of 79. And here's the Sheffield All Sport Diver 1A. $178, size of 40 millimeters, and 200 meter water resistance. Dang, that's some magnification on that Cyclops. Dude, if you're gonna use a Cyclops, magnify the heck out of it, and that's what they did. This dark green stuff going on here with the loom. Looks like the numbers are loomed too, so I like that. They look really dim in this picture I have. Sometimes the pictures aren't as good. It's tough, but you know, I put the loom shots there so you could see. Comes on a Tropic rubber strap, it looks like. I like that it's got all the markings all the way around. That's really nice. Score of 79. Next we have the Winfield Master Diver. This is $319, 44 millimeter diameter, 200 meters of water resistance. It's got kind of a turtle-ish shape to it, Seiko turtle. Kind of interesting. You've got your military time here on the outside. That's kind of nice. Loomed date and date window, but the date itself is loomed. It's a negative display loomed date. I think this is the only one. There's like 9 total loom date watches in the entire series. It's a very rare thing to have. You can buy loom date wheels for modding, so you can certainly slap a loom date on things, but it's actually pretty darn rare. But this is super rare to have a negative display loom date. I have to imagine that's not going to last very long. It's just, you know, you shine a UV light on it or whatever, you're out in the sun, it's probably only going to last a couple minutes. I don't think it would last all night, but it's cool that it's there. So it gets a couple points for that loom date. Gets a couple points. Doesn't do a lot for me personally. It's kind of a plain watch. 319 I think is a bit much for this, but you get that cool loom date. So you do you. It's a 79, so C+ grade. Absolutely passing, totally viable dive watch. Next is the Seastern Sub 600T. Available in the standard docks. The colors here: black, blue, silver, orange, pale blue, and yellow. This orange, man, they need to work on that. That is not a good orange. Why did I choose that one then? I've tried to put these in their best light. This is not in its best light. But good grief, we've got another loom date. Pretty sweet. Loom looks actually pretty good on this thing. Maybe actually better than the Doxa. The Doxa dive watches don't have great loom. From what I can tell from the pictures, it seems like that's a weak spot. But yeah, Seastern loom here, at least from this picture, looks pretty good. No crown guards on this thing. Score 79. All right, Aragon Enforcer NE20. You get this thing in orange, purple, and green. $275. 50 millimeter diameter. Hello. 1,000 meters of depth rating. Hello! 18 thick. Okay. Refer to my chart here. The average thickness for a 1,000 meter depth rating watch is 15.7. This one is 18. Not great. You get loom on your crown though. I mean, the highlight here is the NE20 movement, which has a power reserve. It has a day on the yellow hand here and a date on the orange. That's really cool. If you just like collecting movements, maybe this is a great place to get the NE20. I don't see this movement in very many watches, so that's cool. The power reserve is absolutely cool, and I like how they did it here with the green, the blue, and the red. You get some numbers on here, you get some applied indices, you've got a full loom bezel, cool looking case design. Something to be aware of though is you might be married to this bracelet if you get this, because look at you don't have standard lugs here. You've got this other kind of thing going on. Yeah, I don't think you'd swap this out. I think you're stuck with the bracelet. The bracelet does have an extension on it, but sometimes with these big watches, it's like, oh, maybe I'll get. Well, I'm wearing a 50 millimeter Aragon watch right here, and the bracelet helps it. I think if I put this on a NATO, it would be crazy top heavy. The thick bracelet helps to balance it out, but you don't have that option with this one here, the Enforcer. Looks like you're stuck with this bracelet. Score 78. All right, and here's the Chronos 6005, the sub. It is $239, 40 millimeter size, and 200 meters water resistance. There's a few brands that do Submariner homages. I've got a Pagani design here. I actually can't remember if Pagani's in this video. It's not good. The Pagani's not good. Kronos is supposed to be kind of the best Chinese homage of the Submariner. Unlike the real Submariner, this has full loom on that bezel. Beautiful. Love to see it. You can get black, blue, green. Yeah, I mean, if you like the Submariner, this is a good homage. You've come to the dive watch video. If you watch this thing, you can't plead ignorance to other stuff that's out there. There's other good blue watches out there if you want a blue or a black or a green. You don't have to do the Submariner homage. There's some cool ones. Not necessarily in this low price range. I guess that's the challenge. You kind of have to go up in price to get unique designs. Except Proxima. Proxima does cool stuff. But yeah, I'm not your dad. You know, get the watch you want. But you don't have to copy Rolex is all I'm saying. 13.5 millimeter thickness. That's one difference with the Rolex. That's what everybody struggles with. How do you get the watches so thin? Rolex has a very thin watch. I think it comes down to movement. This might have a PT 5000, something like that. PT 5000 is thinner than a Seiko NH35, but they often just slap them in the same watches that have the Seiko NH35, so you don't even get advantage of the PT 5000. But yeah, this is a thick watch. The bracelet, from what I understand, is really nice, especially the clasp that comes on it. If you're going to do a sub homage, I would go with this one. Score 78. Next is the Tandorio Serica homage. $71, 40 millimeters in diameter, and 200 meters water resistance. This thing is super thick, and it has a NATO strap on top of that, so if you don't like a thick watch, I would stay away from this one. Interesting loom here. Doesn't do it for me. I'll be honest, this does not do it for me. But a cool thing about this is that it's in red. The real Serica only has black and white and maybe blue. It must have blue, because that stuck out in my mind that red is the exception to the Serica. That's one reason you can kind of justify an homage. There's sort of two things you need for the homage. You need it to be super cheap, so you're actually saving money. I think Jody has some sort of rule of thumb for ratio. It has to be 1/20th or less or something like that. But yeah, the real Serica is thousands of dollars, so I think you're justified on that front. And then I think it's also a bonus if they have a color that the real one, the Serica, doesn't have. That sort of legitimizes it a little bit. But yeah, the total score is 78 on this guy. All right, 29. And there's not just 84 in this whole thing. 84 watches with a passing grade, and this is 29. The Proxima PX1703. Oh, they say they have a PT 5000. Score of $275, size of 39 millimeters. If you like a small dive watch, this is a good choice probably. And 200 meters water resistance. Very interesting here with the triangles. Oh my gosh, there's a triangle every 3. If you need to count increments of 3, that's cool. Very interesting. Full loom on this bezel. Look at that. Very unique. I mean, Proxima, you get major points from me for just doing some cool stuff that I don't see. I think a lot of times they're just using just generic AliExpress parts or whatever. So I don't know if you can really call it a unique design, but they do a little fun stuff here. Like, look at this bezel with the triangles and stuff. The white and the orange. I don't know what this is trying to copy. I don't think it's really trying to copy anything. It's just kind of a cool watch. It kind of looks like a mod watch. Very thin, 11.5. Very thin. The average is 13.3, so 11.5 is well under, almost 2 millimeters thinner than normal for this depth rating of 200. Good job, Proxima. Score of 78. And in 30th place is the Tandorio Monster. It's homaging the Seiko Monster. The loom looks to be, but yeah, you see you got a bunch of colors. $59. See, that's why you do this. For the $59, that's why you get these things. But 42 millimeters in size, 200 meters depth. So it's not huge. I bet the Seiko's bigger than this. But yeah, you get a date. You get these fun hands and crazy teeth on the outside. A bunch of other information here too. Sapphire. Most of these have sapphire. It's actually kind of rare to see something other than sapphire. I'll try to pay attention and let you know. But yeah, the scorecards are always here to tell you all the details. Score of 78. In 31st place is the Aragon DF Dive Tank NE57. Advertising that movement right up front. It's a $280 watch 48 millimeters in size, 500 meter water resistance. And if you get this, it's for that full lume. The full lume bezel, the full lume dial. There's just lume on absolutely everything. You've got, I think maybe you're not going to see the color. I don't think you're going to see the colors of this power reserve in the dark. I don't think that's going to come across. So this render might be, take it with a grain of salt here. I think this thing looks amazing. And Wang Liang, designer for Aragon, check out his video on it. I think he shows a real lume shot of it at the end. He typically does. But really cool case, really unique. Man, these lug bars here, there's some kind of proprietary technology here. Who knows what? I mean, they do some crazy stuff at Aragon, but a power reserve is just so sweet for a dive watch. It really is. It's just really nice to know that you've got power left, or how much. But this thing is huge. It's a 48 millimeter and it's 17 thick, so it's losing a lot of points for how big it is. It really is big. I still think it's a viable watch. Absolutely. It's a C+. Yeah, and it's got some minute numbers on here. Now, he did warn, Wang Liang did warn, this is unprotected lume on the bezel. It's probably going to scratch. It's probably going to get stained. If you spill coffee on it, it will turn brown. I think that's the case with all bezels, so unless you have like a sapphire insert or something, that is something to be aware of with full lume bezels. I think that's always a chance. So if you have a really crisp white one like this, it's like wearing some white pants. You get to enjoy it for a while, but at some point, it's gonna get stained. So there you go. Score 77, great score. Next is the Octopus Kraken something. Brawn Diver? I think I typed in exactly what it said, but anyway, here you go. $289, 43 millimeter, nice size, 500 meters of water resistance. We're getting deep water resistance here, right off the bat. Like there's some deep water resistance dive watches. That's what I've concluded. I didn't know there were so many, but yeah, bronze case, great against that corrosion, at least better than steel. Date complication, looks like an original design, so that's cool. Next is the Steel Dive SD 1952 V. No radium on this thing. Sweet. I don't want any radium on my watch, so that's good to know. It's $199, size of 41 millimeters, and water resistance of 300. This lume shot looks pretty nice. It's looking good. It's like there's yellow lume and green. So they didn't match the lumes on the bezel and the dial, but it might be nice. I don't know about the sustain on these things. These pictures are they give you an idea, but you do need to watch reviews where somebody has a watch in their hands to actually know how the lume is. That's one thing I can't do with this 633 dive watch series. Score 77. Aragon Dive Master 42. I covered this in the specs to price thing. This is one of the best value watches you can get. It's in the top 5 in my opinion. Best value under $200. And yeah, $150. Lots of colors here. Look at all these colors. The white is the only full lume dial. If you really want a full lume dial, Aragon has a lot of full lume options. They really go nuts with lume. You can find a lot of really cool stuff with Aragon with lume and tritium lume and all kinds of stuff. You can tell I'm a fan of Aragon. Nothing else I really want to highlight on this one. Score 77. And next is the Stalingrad Commando. Price $235, size of 43 millimeters, and water resistance of 200. Totally fine. Cool crown here. It's got kind of a drill pattern on the crown. That's pretty sweet. You've got all the little hashes on the bezel. It's fully lumed. Full lume bezel. That's really cool. I don't know much about this thing, about this brand or anything, but their watch is very unique here. It does have a leather strap. The leather is a penalty. You can swap it out, obviously, but kind of reasonable proportions here. Nothing crazy. I love that these numbers are loomed. That's the way to do it. A lot of times they put numbers on and they put tiny little dots that are loomed. This one, you get the full numbers loomed. If it lasts, then that's great loom. But I like the pattern. The loom pattern is good here. Loom on the second, all that. Score 77. These are all 77. In 36th place is a Rolex homage. We're gonna see so many darn Rolex homages, you're gonna be like sick of it by the end. In all price ranges, like nobody's immune from it, it seems like, but this is a $200 one. It's 1,000 meters. It's not the cheapest 1,000 meter dive watch. We have one that's $5 cheaper. that was earlier, $5 cheaper, with better specs actually. Yeah, what did that get? The ratio got an 81. This thing gets a 77. So yeah, 4-point difference. Ratio's better, all things considered. 19.4, that's extra thick. The average thickness for 1,000 meter dive resistant watch is 15.7. 15.7, okay? This one's 19.4, almost 4 millimeters thicker than the average. And that ratio was almost a millimeter thinner than the average. Clearly, if you're choosing between the two, I go with the ratio. It's an original design, all that business. But yeah, this has nice lume here. I'll give it that. It's got good lume. Just copying Rolex, stealing their homework, I guess. No Cyclops. A paragraph of text, all that sort of business. But yeah, this one does have a helium escape valve, which I guess you'd expect it with a 1,000 meter dive watch. They don't all. This one does. Score 77. Next is the Steel Dive ST1979. This is one of the ones that could have been in the top 5 specs to price. It's not copying anybody. Well, it's sort of copying the Squale. In fact, yeah, this is a copy of the Squale 1521. So it is a homage, but looks like they did a pretty good job of it. The printing looks subpar. I don't know why that is. I think it's because the color of these indexes doesn't look quite right. But I skipped a ton of stuff. It's $107. It's 40 millimeters, 200 meters water resistance. I mean, it's a viable option. It really is. If you're looking for a cheap watch, this is a viable option. Looks like it's got good lume. Score 77. Steel Dive is one of the better Chinese brands. In 38th place is the UW Aquaria. 243 bucks, 42 millimeters in size, 200 meters. Now, that price, you may think, why is this watch so distinctive at that price? I think this is a Kickstarter. I think when it actually goes live, it may be more. We're probably looking at pictures of a prototype. They splashed it with water to make it look cooler. But yeah, it's got some cool lume. It's got this kind of 3D elements on the inside. It's inspired by jellyfish or something. They have some other really cool colors. The numbers are different sizes here. What is going on here with the 5 all the way down to the 45? This weird thing. I'm not a fan of this bezel. It's really weird, but you might think that is the coolest thing you've ever seen and want to go for it. Yeah, they've got 3 other colors. Score is 76. And in 39th place is the Dan Henry 1970, our first internal rotating dive bezel. So the crown screw down. Internal dive bezel, it's not the best for a couple reasons. Well, there's 2 ways it can go. Either you can have a screw down crown that you can't really use in the water when you're actually in the water, or you have a crown that doesn't screw down, that controls gears or whatever, that is safe to operate underwater, but at the same time, since it doesn't screw down, it can move all the time, and so the bezel may migrate. The traditional rotating dive bezel that you just turn, there's no water issues ever. But with these internal dive bezels, you have to make a choice. Do you have the crown screw down or have it not screw down? And there's downsides to both ways. This one has a mineral crystal. That's probably the first we've seen it with a mineral crystal. 310 bucks, 40 millimeter size, great size for the small wristed, and 200 meters of water resistance. The bezel appears to be fully lumed. I think I called it a full lume bezel. Yeah, full lume bezel. It's looking kind of dim. It may not actually be. And this may be for another colorway. But here's the lume shot I could find for this one. Appears to be full lume bezel. Unless the internal ring is just so bright that it splashes out and you can see everything else. But either way, it looks fairly impressive. I really like the look of this. It's a kind of a retro deal. But yeah. Score 76. All right, next in 40th place is the Sea Stern 62 Moss. Seiko makes the real 62 Moss. This is a homage. Price of 140 bucks, size of 37 millimeters, water resistance of 200 meters. Great lume on this thing. The actual 62 Moss is surprisingly expensive. I don't remember offhand, I'm so sorry. I think it's over 2,000. Anyway, it's in that skin diver format. There's a lot of great skin divers. It's just, you see this case here where it kind of, it's sort of like a diamond that's cut off and then just these straight lugs. Man, this is a popular style of watch. This is one of the ones with a lume date. This is one of the 11 and the whole thing that has a lume date. We've already seen 3 in the budget, and it, you know, maybe the lume dates are mostly in the budget price range, but it's a cool feature. I always thought it was weird though, because if you charge it up before bed, you wake up in the morning, it's gonna flip over, and you're not gonna be able to see the date. It's just to look at right away. If you charge that thing up, then look at that date right away. If you can't remember it for like an hour or something, then this is for you. If it's all dark, you can look again and see it. But so I admit the lume date's a little silly, but it gets extra points for that. Come on, you know, that's my whole philosophy of the dive watch, is that it's kind of a fun thing. It's not to be taken too seriously. So this is fun. $140, 37 millimeters, water resistance of 200. Nice red color. I haven't said the thickness for a while. Average thickness for a 200 meter dive watch is 13.3 is average. So this is 1.2 millimeters thicker than average for this water depth. And it's a 37, so you're shrinking the diameter and you're increasing the thickness. It's gonna look pretty thick, I think. If you're interested in this one, check out one where somebody shows you all the different angles and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a pretty cool one. From the specs only, the score is a C, just a C grade. All right, 41th place is the Hawaiian Lifeguard Association watch. I don't think they really have a ton of other options. They're kind of known for these quartz watches. It's a $250 watch, 42 millimeters, 200 meters water resistance. Probably for a lifeguard to use. The lume pattern here is for a different, I think it's for the black version. It looks like they lume the second. Very nice, bright red minute hand. I like this. 2 primary colors, yellow and red, bright red. It's a nice looking dive watch in my opinion. The quartz may turn some people off. You know, you can make an argument for quartz, you can make an argument for automatic. I don't think it's a huge deal either way. There's benefits and drawbacks to both. But yeah, here's one of these more famous, I would say, budget quartz dive watches. Is this Hawaiian Lifeguard one? From what I understand, it's got a great reputation. So, but yeah, you get all the minute marks, you know, numerals in 10-minute increments. It's got that nice bright color. That Jacques Cousteau, again, take it up with Jacques, not with me. Bright colors are great, according to Jacques. So there you go. Score of 76. Next is the San Martin SNO 123G. Version 2. Ooh, getting fancy. Price of $168. Size of 44 millimeters. 200 meter dive depth. I think this is homaging the Marathon Navigator. I'm pretty sure that's what it's homaging. They even have these like chunky lugs that Marathon has. These don't look quite as chunky as Marathon's, believe it or not. Marathon, man, they go nuts on the chunkiness of their lugs. But yeah, it's got this integrated crown. It is an asymmetrical design. It's got a little bit more material on that right side of it. Next is the Pagani Design PD YS005. And homage the Seamaster 300. So they're just copying Seamaster. That's what these guys do. $55. You know, if you want the Seamaster thing, whatever. I don't judge. I've got homages myself. I cannot judge on that front. But yeah, not much to say about it. It's got the bracelet extension. If it's like the Paganis I have, it's hit or miss. The Pagani bracelet is kind of hit or miss on that extension, but at least you get one. Score of 76. Next is the Bernie Compressor V3. I think this is an original design, guys. $120, 42 millimeters. And 200 meters water resistance. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a unique design. There's no way, I'm sorry, there's no way this orange lume is that bright. Like, it's just not happening. So take this loom shot with a grain of salt here. It's not going to look this good, I promise you. Yes, find a review of this or something and see for yourself. I don't think the loom's going to look this nice. Really cool what they did with the numbers. Like, this must be a homage, right? Because this is too creative. The 20 here and the 50, that's cool. That's genuinely creative there. So yeah, this might be one to look into a little more. It's definitely intriguing me a little right now. Again, the internal rotating bezel, not for me. For me personally, I just wouldn't get one with the internal rotating bezel. It doesn't appeal to me, but for some it may. But yeah, it's got a score of 76. Pretty good score. In 45th place is the Vancouver Watch Corp Crossfire. Comes in green or red, $329, size of 43 millimeters, and water resistance of 200 meters. Some nice loom here. Interesting, it stops at 15. That's something to note. It does not go any further. Even though they have little markings that go around around the bezel. It's a bronze or brass case. Nice crown guards here. A date. Very interesting hands here. An arrow hour hand that does not flare out very much. Pretty cool. Score 75. In 46th place is the Foreteller Cambrian. Comes black, white, blue. $219, size of 40 millimeters, 300 meters water resistance. I've never heard of this micro brand, Foreteller. Average grade, full loom dial, full loom bezel. The loom looks really nice on this thing. It's a classy looking dive watch. I like that it's at the 6 o'clock. There's a little loom even on the underside of that date window, which if you get the full loom dial, you don't need it, but for blue and black dials, that's probably pretty nice. But yeah, it seems like a really capable dive watch. And the bracelet does not have an extension. It's unfortunate, but still a capable dive watch, and you can always change the bracelet to something else if you want to. Score 75. In 47th place is the Steel Dive ST 1974. You see, I chose the pink one. There aren't a ton of pink watches. I know at this point we've already seen a few, but yeah, at least a few that offer a pink option. But here you get to see it in full display. I actually have a pink watch, and I really enjoy wearing it. It's weird. Pink is much more versatile than I thought it would be. And yeah, it's something about it. It's just preppy. I mean, pink used to be a boy color. I'm talking hundreds of years ago, 100 years ago. You know, that flipped at a certain point, but pink is just nice. I think we can all enjoy pink here. But yeah, the loom on this is amazing. At least the picture here looks fantastic. It looks like it's very well loomed. It's got that turtle case shape, huge crown guards, and that it's almost like the crown guards stick out past the crown. So this case is kind of oversized. But yeah, about average thickness for a 200-meter dive watch. So it probably wears pretty nice. Score of 75, C grade. And next is the Islander ISL 07. Price of $329, size of 43 millimeters, and a water resistance of 200. And it looks like they have a yellow and a white version as well. I know there's other ones in this case shape as well, I'm pretty sure. So there might be other colors to this too. But you know, Islander makes a lot of watches that look like this. They're kind of Seiko mod style watches. These look like great value for money, and 14 mil thickness. It's a little bit thick, just a little bit, not too crazy. The loom shots on the Islander website are really bright, and I tried to make them uniform, so I darkened this up and increased the contrast. It doesn't really compete with a lot of the other loom shots that they take when the lights are fully out. So, unfortunately, that's all I could find. I try to have more uniformity with the loom shots so you can kind of compare better between brands. So I don't know how great the loom is. It's probably better than it looks in this picture is all I'm saying. Score 75. And in 49th place, we have the Orient Cano. It is $285. It's 44 millimeters in size, and it's a 200-meter water resistance watch. You can get one with like an orange bezel. There's blue, green, and red dials. There's obviously this red bezel. There may be other bezel colors, but for sure there's an orange bezel on one of these things. You get your day date. Interesting that there's like a divider between them. I don't think I've seen that before. That's kind of cool. And then just two horizontal lines instead of like a full border. But yeah, it's an interesting looking watch. These Orients, I hate to say this, but the Orients always look kind of dinky to me. I mean, it's huge, but dinky meaning like tinny. It doesn't look high quality to me. I don't know how to put my finger on it. It might be just their product listings, because when I see other people post a picture of an Orient, it always looks better than Orient's product shots. So maybe they just take horrible pictures of their product. That could be. It's relatively thin, tiny bit under average for a 200 meter dive watch, with the 44 millimeter diameter and the 12.9 thickness. That's a good like ratio to each other, you know. I think it's going to look like just a normal dive watch. It'll look good. So, score of 75. And in 50th place is the Addy's Dive Tuna. We had Steel Dive, now there's Addy's Dive. They both have like a scuba guy on them. Like, is that the same? I'm looking at them next to each other. The logos are nearly identical. So, not a lot. I mean, everybody copies everybody's homework apparently. But yeah, it's 66 bucks, 48, and it's 300 meters water resistance. Sorry, I had to grab, I have a tuna, and a big part of that diameter is this shroud thing. It doesn't actually wear so huge. The tunas, it's kind of hard to judge them on the same sort of basis with the diameters, because, and the thickness as well. Like, well, I take that back. This thing is very thick. Just something to know about the tunas. This diameter looks really large, but it doesn't seem so crazy large because it's all this big shroud thing on the outside. The actual bezel is not going to be so crazy. I think this one was like 44 or something on the bezel, and then 50 something for the shroud. The shroud makes its measuring proportions bigger than its like wearing proportions, how it actually feels. But tunas are really cool, very unique design. 66 bucks seems like a good deal. The non-matching of the dial and the chapter ring, you know, the dial's a little bit more light. It's a pet peeve, but anytime you have these sunburst dials and then you have matching bezel, but it's not really quite matching, that's something that just bothers me. I think I'm just a little picky about colors. And so I would prefer if you had like a sunburst green that you'd have black for the other stuff. That would be a lot better looking watch to me than having mismatched greens here. But they did a full lume bezel. They've got standard lume on the dial. Bracelet is going to be a disappointment for sure. Score of 75. In 51st place is the Circuit Reef X. 300 bucks, 43 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. Lots of colors to choose from. Really cool that the Scorpion is lumed. It's also kind of cool to see something other than like a shark or a scuba thing or whatever. It's a dive watch, but does it have to have like a mermaid or a shark on it? You can do other stuff, so it's cool they put a little scorpion on there. Why not? It looks a little bit cheap to me. It looks like it doesn't really stand out as anything super special to me, if I'm honest. But it does the trick. It's a capable dive watch. You've got your nice crown guards here, the 4 o'clock, well, 350 crown, whatever. You've got a crown in this general vicinity of the watch. And I like that the bezel has all the little dots all the way around. There you go, score of 75. Next is the Deep Blue Lizzie Blue, 150 bucks, 36 millimeters. Hey, if you're sleeping and you were waiting for the 36 millimeter watch, here it is. There aren't very many. There are very few, I'll be honest. 300 meters water resistance. It's just like that Deep Blue 1000, but this one is just a smaller one. They have a pink and a purple. I put up the white. I think they did a fairly good job on the white. But you see these indexes here? In my opinion, if you have a white dial, you should have a black border to the indexes. This seems okay. You can still see the darn thing. You've got your helium escape valve if you're a professional. Score of 75. Next is the Heimdaller Tuna in 53rd place. Yellow lume. I don't know what that is. I don't know who makes a yellow lume. So maybe the yellow lume is not so great. I don't have that knowledge. I'm so sorry. The lume on this looks a little weird. The whole watch actually looks a little bit weird. Oh, it's titanium. That's interesting. Okay, titanium's going to help with this large case. It'll probably make it a little bit better on this Tropic strap. There's a lot of tunas. My tuna watch came on a silicone and it was uncomfortable. This one is actually titanium as well. The rubber or silicone strap it came on it would flop around and was uncomfortable. Once I put it on a metal bracelet, it was a lot more comfortable to wear. That's just what I find. If you have a heavy watch, it's nice to have a bracelet to balance it. Pro tip. But yeah, this is a lot smaller than the other tuna we saw. This is only 44. Score of 75. And in 54th place is the Vincero Argo. Comes in black, blue, and white. And I've chosen the white. I think the white looks really nice. I always try to choose the color I think is really puts it in the best light, or is the most interesting to me. Yeah, I shouldn't say puts it in the best light, because a lot of times the black is what puts it in the best light. But I like to look at the other colors, and so sometimes I find the other colors more interesting. But yeah, some people call Vincero just a fashion brand. They make an average dive watch. And a lot of times with fashion brands, their product is way below average. So I think at least with Vincero, that I give them some credit here. I think, you know, if you can produce a dive watch that kind of gets an average rating, that's pretty sweet. Look, 11 millimeters thickness. 13.3 is the average for 200 meters. 11 is nice. It's a couple millimeters thinner than average. The design doesn't appear to be copying Rolex or anything. I mean, this one ain't that bad. Which, yeah, is great praise, right, to say it isn't that bad. My point is just that people rag on Vincero, but I think Vincero made a pretty good dive watch here. Score of 75. In 55th place is an interesting one. This is the Block 33. 179 bucks. 33 millimeters is the smallest watch in the whole darn thing. 100 meters, water resistance. It's a little silly to even have this in the dive watch video series because it's a kid's watch to teach a kid how to tell the time. It takes like some dive watch inspiration, but it's really just for kids. It's got 100 meters and screw down crown. There's no crown guards. It's a quartz. Has a pass-through strap. The lugs are, there's no spring bars, it's just an integral case. You know, it's a plastic case. Plastic is not so bad for a dive watch. You don't have any corrosion issues or anything. It's very light, so that's good for a kid. But yeah, they do this really, I mean, the cool thing about this block watch is how they do the time here. You see, like this is something my daughter's going through trying to learn time. It confuses her the fact that the hour hand will be close, like if the hour hand is in between 5 and 6 and it's almost to 6, she doesn't know why isn't it 6. And this kind of helps to show you that the entire block of the hour, as long as the hour hand is within this block, that's the hour that it is. A ton of thought went into this. This thing, I check their website very regularly to see if these things are available. They're never available. They're always sold out. I'm really pumped to get one for my daughter and my son. And my other daughter, my other daughter's less than 2 years old, so she doesn't need a watch, obviously. But no, I'm just excited that such a product exists because this thing is really good. To screw down the crown, all that stuff. Anyway, even when you try to score it as a dive watch, you still get a 74, still a C grade on this block watch. So that's pretty cool. All right, in 56th place is the Islander Greenport ISL 251. It's come in different colors. This is very interesting. I haven't seen anything quite like this. Very cool day and date wheels, custom colors on those date wheels. A lot going on with the design. Very cool. You've got your military time in here. It's a dual time bezel. I don't think we've seen a ton of those so far. I don't know if I've seen a single dual time bezel so far. This might be the first one. There are a ton in this video, I promise you that, but it's $279, 39 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. Very good wearing dimensions if you have a small wrist, if you're small guy. Score 74. In 57th place is the Seiko 5 Sports SRPD 77. It's 268 bucks, size of 43 millimeters, and it has a water resistance of 100. Yeah, the 100, after we've been seeing nothing but 200s and stuff. I mean, there's a 100 on that block watch, but for a dive watch, 100 seems low. But most of us are not going to need more than 100. I think a scuba dive that goes beyond 100 is kind of hardcore, from what I understand. But yeah, you've got your crown guards, you've got your day date. Those are the kinds of things that are saving this from having a really bad score. Because there's no lume on the bezel, unfortunately, as you can see in the lume shot. It's kind of cool, and yeah, you can get a Seiko for under 300 bucks. Score of 74. And in 58th place is the Aragon Armour. Got a purple, a blue, and a pink. They used to have some other colors. The thing with Aragon is that these things don't last forever. They kind of do these limited productions. One of the things that keeps the brand going is that they do unique designs and they do limited runs, and people who really like Aragon will jump on it because they know it's not going to last for very long. They won't necessarily make more. But yeah, you get really cool loom here. There's loom on the crown, which they do a lot, I think. Really chunky looking. It's only a 44. I say only because Aragon just loves to do 50s and stuff like that. So for them, 44 is a nice petite watch. So this is one that apparently does have a bracelet extension, which is nice. You don't see a ton of purple watches. I really like purple too. Purple and pink are nice. I like purple and pink. Score 74. And here's a Hallowed FF for 50 fathoms. 50 fathoms homage. Commitment Ocean. Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of ocean commitment going on here, whatever that means. There's a blue and a red apparently. $329, 41 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. That's a lot for a Hallowed. That's a lot of money. I'm surprised it costs that much. Full loom bezel though, that's kind of cool. I can't tell if that date wheel is color matched or if it's a black. I think it's a black. Oh, here's a mistake here. This should be 3 points higher. It says no bracelet extension, so my bad. This should actually be silicone. It's shown on a tropic rubber strap, so this should be a 0 here instead of a 3. So the score is 77. It's a C plus instead of a C. Not a huge difference, but yeah, a little bit thinner than average. So it actually kind of looks okay. I shouldn't rag on these guys just because it says Hallowed. Custom. Oh, it's custom. Yeah, it's probably a nice watch. I do like these the bezel inserts on the 50 fathom style. It looks really nice. Score of 77. And in 60th place is the Baltony S3026. $173, 42 millimeters diameter, and 300 meter water resistance. This is very similar to a CWC sort of thing. You know, they're going for that military style of watch. Very dark Votina here. The loom shot actually looks pretty good, but I don't know what kind of loom they're using. I bet the numbers fade pretty quickly compared to these indexes, but you still have a huge triangle for orientation, so that's nice. It's on a leather strap. Score of 74. And in 61st place is the Redune R2 Turtle, $179, 41 millimeters diameter, 150 meters water resistance. Loom looks okay. Standard dive loom is pip plus hands and indices. It's got standard dive loom. If you like a turtle, maybe this is the one for you. Score 74. All right, I have to put this thing on because I have this one. This is a picture of my personal Pagani design here. 62nd place is the Pagani design PD 1661. Apparently it's now $57, size of 40 millimeters, and a water resistance of 100 meters. When I got mine, it was a little bit more. I think it was $90 or something. The quality is not great. There's some things that are nice on it. The ceramic bezel is really nice. I actually modded mine. I swapped out the dial. I mentioned earlier that the green not matching the green really gets to me. I couldn't stand it. I had to swap out the dial. So I learned a little bit about watch modding the hard way, and I kind of messed some things up. This one came out okay. I also tried to mod an Invicta, and that thing just got destroyed. I tried to pop the bezel off, but it was a different style of bezel, not like it doesn't pop off, and I just ended up just stretching that thing like crazy. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. An interesting thing about these gold tone watches is that they are more corrosion resistant than your average uncoated steel. So PVD steel case offers you slightly more protection. And then also it's harder to scratch it, typically. I mean, it depends on what they're coating it with, but typically PVD is more scratch resistant than steel. A 40 actually feels a little bit small. I kind of like a bigger watch than a 40 for a dive watch, but it does have a bracelet extension. I think I mentioned this before already in this video, but these bracelet extensions on the Paganis are very hit or miss. I am ashamed to admit that I have a couple other Pagani design watches, and the bracelet extensions on both of those are totally whack. This one is good. this gold one, but the other two I have are not good. So I don't really recommend a Pagani design, but it's still suitable for diving if you want to use it for diving. Score 74. All right, in 63rd place is the Hallowed Avenger, 238 bucks, 43 millimeters in diameter, and 200 meters resistance. I don't know if they call it an Avenger, but this is a Breitling Avenger homage, so that's why I said Hallowed Avenger. But this is really cool. They've got the Chinese symbols up here. This is a California dial style. California dials, typically Romans on the top and then Arabics on the bottom. But they did Chinese on the top, Arabics on the bottom. That is cool. I really like that. And then, look, they loomed them up. This is good looking. The hands, though, the hand loom is not looking so great. 43 is not that big. I think the Breitling Avenger is probably bigger. It's kind of average thickness for this water resistance rating. It's got a nice 6 o'clock date. These horizontal indexes here. I just really like this one. Military time on the outer perimeter. Very cool. Score 73, so still a passing grade. 73 is the bottom. Your C grade is the bottom. Once you get to 72, that's C minus, and I do not recommend. But you see, we still got a bunch left. We'll see a bunch more 73s. In 64th place is the Redune R3 Seahorse. I think there's an Omega that looks like this or something. There's some famous watch, I'm so sorry, that looks like this. Price of $179, size of 43 millimeters, and water resistance of 200. Cool looking loom. I think this is taken from a different colorway, but I expect this loom would be similar. Definitely check it out if you're gonna get the blue or something. I think this is the loom from the yellow one. It just has a yellow ring. It's still a black dial. As I mentioned before, the inner rotating bezel has drawbacks. This one does have the screw down crowns. Score 73. Continuing, in 65th place is the Aragon DF Dive Tank. A bunch of colors available. $179, 40 millimeters in diameter, and 500 meters water resistance. There's no crown guards on this thing. This yellow looks really nice. Really cool shape to this thing. It's pretty thick. Part of that is the 500 meters. The average thickness for 500 meters is 14.5. So this is a little bit thicker than average for this particular water resistance rating. You know, it comes on a silicone rubber strap. Loom looks decent. Nothing crazy, kind of standard dive loom. Oh, no, it is not standard dive loom. That's one of the reasons it loses some points here. There's actually 3 points off if you don't have a loom second hand. So that definitely hurts to watch, to have no loom second hand. It's still a passing grade, just squeaking in there with a C grade. Score 73. In 66th place is the San Martin 62 Moss. I said we'd see a ton of these. Man, there's so many watches of this case shape. 166 bucks, 39 millimeters in diameter, and 200 meters water resistance. This is looking pretty stylish, I'll be honest. This is looking really good. You've got all your little dots around the edge of the bezel. I love to see that. Standard dive loom on this. 13 isn't too crazy for the thickness. I mean, this seems like a good option. I hear great things about San Martin. And 166 is not too bad. A lot of times their watches are more expensive than that. So this might be on sale or something. Seems like a good one if you really like this look. San Martin is known for their quality above some of the other Chinese brands. Score 73. And in 67th place is the Spinnaker Flus Lagoon. $305, 43 millimeters in diameter, and 150 meters water resistance. Kind of an unusual water resistance rating there. Atypical. In this video series, I have 237 watches with a 200 meter rating, but only 7 with the 150. And then 65 that have 100. So, you know, there's a ton with 200, a lot less with 100, and then a tiny, tiny sliver that have this 150. Only 7 in the whole video, so it's kind of an unusual water resistance rating, but there it is. Cool loom on this bezel, and I mentioned this before, I love these rounded sapphire bezel cover things. I think it looks really cool. Blancpain does it, and then other people do it as well. It looks really nice. It's on a leather strap, so it lost a little points for that. 13 seems appropriate. I like that there's numbers here. Seems like a very suitable dive watch. If you like the look, this is probably a good choice. 300's a bit much. Kind of getting to the top of the budget category is all. Budget category, of course, being the lowest category of all the prices. So I can't exactly say it's expensive if it's $305. when the video goes from 0 up to whatever 30,000, whatever the most expensive thing in here is. But yeah, score of 73. And in 68th place is the Molnia Chameleon. This is a $312 watch, 46 millimeter diameter, with 100 meters of water resistance. I think this was the least offensive looking of the colors. They have a blue, a green, and a tan, and they're all camo, like blue camo and green camo. They look, it's hard to tell the time. This one was the easiest on the eyes, in my opinion. I think the camo doesn't look all that great. I like camouflage, but I don't like it on my watch dial. I think there's a time and a place for camouflage, and on the dial of your watch is not necessarily a time or place. But yeah, it's coated in physical vapor deposition. Huge lume pip up here, you can see that. You'll notice I did this generic thing. I couldn't find any pictures of lume, so I just had to base it on the description where they say that the hands and indices are lumed, and there's a lume pip. And so here you go, that meets that description. And then you've got little marks for every single minute around the dial. That's kind of nice. Score of 73. And in 69th place is a San Martin SN0115G. $258, size of 40 millimeters, and water resistance of 200. This one was praised by people for the fact that it is an original design. Despite having looked at all these watches, I don't have like an encyclopedic knowledge of all the different case shapes and everything like that. So it does look pretty original to me. Kind of cool bracelet you got on this. It does apparently have an extension on that bracelet, so that's good. Lume looks just kind of, it's a standard dive lume. Doesn't appear to necessarily be in the top 10% of brightest lumes or anything. Probably just about average with the lume is what it looks like from that picture. And there's no date on this thing. Definitely would have scored a couple points better with the date. I think it'd be a better watch with the date on there somewhere. Maybe at the 6 or at the 12. I think there's only one watch in this whole video that has a date at the 12. You'll see that later. Score 73. In 70th place is the Heimdallr Monster version 2. The lume on this looks better than the other monster we saw so far. Price of $96, 48 millimeters in width, and 200 meters water resistance. This looks pretty good. I hear that Heimdallr's pretty good. It's okay. It's got a shark. There's a lot of things that have sharks on them, and this is one of them. It says silicone or rubber strap. You can get on the silicone. The picture shows a bracelet. That bracelet does not have an extension, which is why that's why I put it as a score as a silicone. I just put up the wrong picture. Sorry about that. Total score is 73. In 71st place is the Casio Duro. $70, 44 millimeters in width, and it's 200 meters water resistance. This is one of these ones that people say, oh, this is a great budget watch. Well, here it is. It's in my list of budget watches, and I agree that it is a capable dive watch. When you have a C grade, do you really brag about it? Not really. You don't really brag about a C grade. So a Casio is not really anything to get excited about. Shocker. But yeah, it is a quartz movement, which I've mentioned before. There's benefits and drawbacks to both quartz and automatic. Yeah, quartz has some advantages in certain areas. There's a 12 millimeters thickness, which the average is 13.3, as we've said, for 200 meters, so about a millimeter thinner than the average, so that's good. The lume looks okay, surprisingly. I don't know, I'm surprised. It's got a standard lume pattern, and it looks decent. Total score is 73. And in 72nd grade, we have the Thorn Shiru Mamba Spirit. Mamba's out for this one, guys. $229, 43 millimeters, and 200 meters of water resistance. Mamba out. I don't want to know what that's all about. But this is a 50 Fathoms homage, but like kind of a weird one that has these red marks. I think they make kind of a normal one too. Thorn does. Why does it say Mamba out? I really do wonder. And this strange font they have here too, like Times New Roman or something. Weird font they have. Automatic divers with the apostrophe. This isn't an ISO certified dive watch. So that's what when it has the apostrophe there, that's supposed to mean that it's an ISO certified dive watch. This one is not, I promise you. The movement is not protected from magnetism with like a Faraday cage or something. The bracelet doesn't have an extension. The lume looks really great, actually. As I stated before, who knows how long it'll last. You can see it's a little bit dim even in the product listing, probably from the Fotina. Fotina lume generally doesn't last as long because there's dye mixed in with the paint. Score 73. Okay, and I can't say what place it's in because, well, it's technically in 73rd place, but it's going to get confusing if I do that for these red ones. This is the first one I don't recommend. I'm wearing this watch and I really like it, so it's a little weird that I'm saying I don't recommend it because I actually would recommend this to anybody who wants. Just based on my scoring system, this is not where it's at. And I'll explain a little bit why that may be, but anyway, it's $250, size of 52 millimeters, and 500 meters water resistance. Does it look like a 52? It probably does, actually. It's 52 millimeters due to this humongous shroud it has on the outside. The actual dial across doesn't seem so crazy. It's probably more like a 44. But yeah, it's got a titanium case. What really kills this one is the thickness, 17 millimeters, and then the 52. It's losing a lot of points for the 52, and it's just underneath here. So it's just 1 point under. I had to set the cutoff somewhere, and I set it at C-. And so if it gets a C- grade, you take that grade home to your parents, they're not happy. So don't get the C- grade. This is my own personal lume shot. No, it does not have red lume. It's just when you first charge it up, it's bright enough that the bezel appears red on the camera, and actually in person too, a little bit. The lume is actually not that impressive on this thing, despite what this picture would have you believe. I think I boosted contrast and stuff. I made this look a little bit. It's not a chronometer. I don't know what else to say about this. So I mentioned this before at some point. I don't remember where. I found this one to be pretty uncomfortable when it had the strap on, so I put on a bracelet. I do recommend that for bigger watches. I wear my big watches loose and on a bracelet, and that's how I like it. They flop around. I kind of like that, personally. So, to each their own. That's how I like to wear it. I know a lot of guys like it to be tighter if it's heavier, but I like it to be looser. Find out what you like. Experiment around. If you find it's uncomfortable, try something different, and maybe you decide you do like to wear a big watch if you try it looser or something. That's what I found. I like them loose. There's the Radune Rectangula R1 Zaku Tuna 2. Not recommended. Score 72. 73rd place of the ones that have a possible good grade is the Phoebus Voyager. And this is the first one, so it says recommend if swap strap. And so that, the bracelet on this thing doesn't have the extension. So if you swap it out for something else, a silicone strap, then you can get this thing, the score up above the cutoff. So we'll see a bunch of those. Anyway, this thing is $309, 39 millimeters size, and 200 meters water resistance. And here's a dual time bezel. I think this is only the second we've seen so far in this whole video. I guess it's not that popular in this price category. But yeah, you get a dual time bezel. Those are kind of fun. As I stated in the methodology, I think a dive bezel is better than a dual time bezel. But a dual time bezel does have its own utility, and you technically can use it to time just fine. These markings in between the hours really don't do anything unless you're trying to do a dual time. But yeah, they have a color matched date wheel. That's nice. And it seems like kind of normal thickness, nothing notable there. Score 72. And 74th of the ones that can be recommended is the MEC Nauta. They make a blue, a black, and a green. It's $313, 40 millimeter size, and 200 meters water resistance. And I like this. If you're going to homage Rolex, mix it up a little bit. Put some red text on there. Give it an arrow minute hand or something. Mix it up. I think that's nice. After all, if you just like the Rolex look, mix it up a little. So I like what they did here. It's got crown guards. It's a steel case like you'd expect. 12.5 millimeters thick. Score 72. And next is the Revelo R6 V2. Price of $167, 44 millimeters in size, and it's a 200 meter water resistance watch. You'll see there's no lume on this bezel. It is a day date you got going on here. Very thick, 15 millimeters thick. That's surprising. And it's on a NATO, so you get double thickness that way. I don't know if it's a NATO or a Zulu, but a pass-through strap of any sort will increase that how much it sits on top of your wrist. It's just material in between that'll make it sit higher already. So it's 15 and it's got a booster seat on your wrist. Score 72. Next is the Monterey Black Tip. Price of $259, 40 millimeters in size, 100 meters water resistance, Rolex case shape, but they mix it up. You get the Seamaster hands. Woohoo! I don't really have anything to say about this one. I couldn't find a loom shot. Sorry about that, but this is the loom pattern it has. Score 72. And 75th of the ones that can be recommended is the Orient FAA watch. $210, 42 millimeters in diameter, 200 meters water resistance. Loom is unimpressive from this photo here. It looks like those numbers will fade very quickly. It looks like all of it's going to fade pretty quickly. That's just my feeling from the picture here. Bracelet doesn't have an extension, so that's why it's got this caveat here with the recommendation. You should swap it out to get over this threshold I've said. But I mean, swapping out any bracelet that doesn't have an extension for a normal strap, that'll be nice. Now, I will mention real quick, I have mechanical pencils. If my bracelet's bothering me, I just push in that little pin and slide it out. I just do the micro adjust with the pencil. It's not that big a deal. I say that because I haven't had any mishaps. If you're doing it outside or something, you push that pin in and then it pops out, well, then you don't have a watch. If it pops out in the grass, or if you're on a boat and it pops out in the water or something. So it is better to have an on-the-fly adjustment. A lot better. It's a lot better to have an on-the-fly adjustment. I'm just saying it's not the end of the world. That you can kind of work around it, is all I'm saying. If you actually like a bracelet and it doesn't have the extension, who am I to judge? But it is superior to have the extension, so the penalty stands for sure. But yeah, this is a score of 72. And in 76th of the ones that it's possible for me to recommend is the Vostok Ratnik. Price of $139, 41 millimeters and 100 meters water resistance. And what is this crazy cuff they have? Like, it comes with this cuff, but would you want to use it? I don't know. It's got a leather strap underneath here. It's got these crazy, I think it's called a shrouded lug. Cool. Left-hand crown, left-hand date as well. Vostok was a trendsetter that Rolex copied here with the left-hand crown, left-hand date. They say it's steel. It's looking like plastic, but they say it's steel. Loom is not really impressive even when fully charged. I think this loom will fade quickly. But it is a full loom bezel. That's kind of cool. I said Ratnik, it's probably Ratnik. Ratnik. They don't roll it so hard. Ratnik. I can't do it. It's actually kind of a cool watch. Obviously, you'd probably lose this cuff thing. That looks really weird. Score 72. And next we have the Casio MRW 200HC. $30, 45 millimeter size, and 100 meters water resistance. I believe this is the cheapest watch. Just under viable dive watch. Part of it is this resin band, and you can't really change it, so that's not great. And, well, there's no loom on the bezel. You've got a day date, that's kind of nice. You've got the military time. It's a push-pull crown, that really hurts it a ton. Push-pull crown, it's a covered methodology. It's still technically 100 meters water resistance. It can go down there if nothing makes the crown come out. But the problem is in the real world, things can get snagged and pull that crown out while you're underwater. The screw-down crown just gives you extra protection over a push-pull crown because nothing is going to pull it out. Although a screw-down crown, you can fail to fully seat it, whereas a push-pull crown, if you push it in, the springs, they're causing that gasket to fully be compressed, giving you that water protection just if it's pushed in at all. You can't kind of half push in a push-pull crown, whereas with a screw-down crown, you do have to screw it all the way to get that full water protection. Oh, last point for resin glass crystal. It's a quartz. Relatively thin, 11.6. That's good. Score 72. Next we have the RGMT Fieldmaster. $220, 46 millimeters in diameter, and 100 meters water resistance. A lot of colors available. Well, I say available. RGMT, I found this one, but most of their catalog appears to be completely unavailable, and I don't know what's going on with that. I saw this one available for sale, so that's why I included it. This will not accept any other bracelet or anything. Look at how they've done this here. So you're kind of wedded to this. I forget which ones do this. The Aquis, is it the Oris Aquis does this? I think that's what it is. I don't think it's something to emulate. I don't see what it adds to do this. Like, just have regular lugs and then we can choose what we want on it. So that's annoying. It's very thick, 15 for a 100 is a little bit crazy. Interestingly, the average thickness of the 100 meter is slightly thicker than the average thickness of a 200 meter. Go figure. Yeah, 200 is 13.3, 100 is 13.4. So 0.1 millimeter thicker on average for the 100 meter water resistance watches. But yeah, either way, like 15, it's a little bit thick for sure. And the bracelet apparently does not have an extension. But the full loom looks really nice. This isn't an actual picture from what, I don't think this is a picture, this is some kind of render, but if it looks anything like this, that is pretty sweet. But I don't recommend it. Scurfa 71. Next is the Armorlight Operator. 299 bucks, 44 millimeters in diameter, and 100 meters water resistance. This is a cool watch. Maybe you just don't use it as a dive watch, but from what I could tell from the product listings, it's a push-pull crown. They don't say that it's screw down, so I'm not gonna say that it is if they don't say it is. It's a fiber reinforced case. This is kind of cool that it's got like it's skeletonized just at the tip of the hour hand, so you can actually, if it's right there, you can look through the hand and see what the military time is. That's pretty cool. But you get your date, which actually seems like a pretty cool watch. 13.5 millimeters thick with the quartz. I don't understand why, but it's not crazy thickness. But yeah, it's too bad there's no loom on the bezel. That's a lot of times what you get. Elephant in the room, why didn't I mention it? Tritium. This is our first tritium illumination watch. Tritium loom watches are never going to look that great in a photo, but in person, they do look great. Especially if it's dark and your eyes have adjusted. The tritium looks amazing. I have a bunch of tritium watches, and yeah, in the early morning when I go, before the sun's up, if I look in a watch case and I see that glowing tritium, it definitely makes me happy to see that. It's definitely pleasing. I don't recommend this as a dive watch. Scurfa 71. And 77th of the ones that have any possibility of being recommended is the La Touraine Maritimer. Man, that's a clunky thing to say. I should come up with a better way to describe these strap swaps, to say what the 77 actually means. There's another Rolex homage. I warned you there would be a lot. There are a lot in all price ranges. And here's one of them. This is a Rolex homage. Very cool looking logo. 299 bucks, 43 millimeters in size, and it's a 200 meter water resistance watch. 13.1 is about average. Nothing to get excited about. No extension on the bracelet. Looks pretty shiny. I like the red text on here. I like the red tip on the second hand. Scurfa 71. 78th of the ones that are possible to be recommended is the Islander ISL 18. Price of 329 bucks, 43 millimeters in diameter, and 200 meters water resistance. The Rolex Yachtmaster has this kind of a bezel insert. It's a cool look. You do sacrifice loom though when you do this. And unlike the Rolex, this isn't made of platinum or whatever. But yeah, it's a cool look. As I mentioned before, the Islander loom shots are hard to kind of standardize with everybody else's loom shots, but I did my best. It's a little bit thicker than average, and the bracelet doesn't have an extension. That pushes it into not recommended, despite a lot of other good stuff going on. Day date, crown guards, loomed second. And here we have that 350 crown again. The logo, I think the Islander logo actually has something to do with this crown thing, like where the crown goes. I think that's what the deal is there. Scurfa 71. And 79th of the ones that are possible to be recommended is the San Martin SN019 sub, in case we forget. I think I put that note in there for myself, but I should have taken it out. Price $239, 41 millimeters in diameter, and 200 meters water resistance. The San Martin is often compared to that Chronos, and the San Martin might be nicer in some aspects, but at least score-wise, the Chronos came out on top, partly because of the bracelet. The San Martin one, to my knowledge, and the product listing and what I know about this thing, there's no bracelet extension. It's cool they have a red bezel, because Rolex does not offer a red bezel. So that's if I was going to get one of these, I'd probably get a red bezel, because it's just something a little different. Otherwise, just copying Rolex, Mercedes hands, so forth. Scurfa 71. And next is the Timex Expedition North Slack Tide. $249, 41 millimeters, and it's a 200 meter water resistance watch. It does have this pusher here. I think that's to set the tide. This blue hand on the central pinion that looks like a second hand, that's actually your tide indicator. that shows you if you're on a rising tide, a high tide, a falling tide, or a low tide. I don't know the nuances of this one, how you set it and stuff. I looked into it a tiny amount and kind of forgot, so I apologize about that. But yeah, that's what I'm calling a useful complication here. When you have a day date, you get this bonus as well. For the day, you get the extra couple points here. But this is the first thing aside from a day that we've seen so far. As we go up in price range, you'll see some really cool complications. I bet it's cool to use. It's an interesting watch. Specs wise, it's just not the best dive watch. I couldn't find a loom shot for this. Score 70. And 80th of the watches that is possible for me to recommend is the Moss Irukanji, priced $328, 42 millimeters in diameter and 200 meters water resistance. Got a cool 8 o'clock crown, or wait, 10 o'clock crown. I'm sorry, 8 is very unusual, but yeah, 10. Well, 10's a little unusual too, isn't it? Screw down crown. There's no crown guards on this thing. It's sort of an original design. It's kind of like a tuna, but it's its own thing. Got the Blancpain style, sort of, well, numerals in 15 increments. That doesn't necessarily mean Blancpain automatically. There's a lot of original stuff going on here. Syringe hour hand, you don't see that very much. They've got this nice purple, another pink for you pink lovers out there. Here's another one that makes a pink. Average thickness for this water resistance. Good loom. Looks like it would look great in the dark. I don't care for this big hole where the date is. It's hard to get around that. Score 70. And next is the Sheffield All Sport 1 Classic. We saw a Sheffield All Sport. This is a different Sheffield All Sport. $108, 40 millimeters in diameter and 200 meters water resistance. Nice left-hand crown. Cool Yachtmaster style muted bezel insert here with markings that go all the way around, all 60 markings, and numbers in 10-minute increments. That's pretty nice. It's a quartz. Probably one of the reasons why it's $100, but quartz is fine. I'm not a quartz hater. They say Miyota 2035. That must be the movement, the quartz movement inside there. It's kind of interesting. Who advertises the quartz movement? Kind of interesting. But yeah, no loom on the bezel. Kind of average looking loom for the dial here. Score 70. All right, now 81st of the watches that is possible for me to recommend as dive watches in the budget category is the Vostok Kommandersky, the red one. Oh, there's no white on the list. I'm wearing a white one. Anyway, the price is $66, 42 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. Now, $66, that's if you get it from smears.com. That's where I got mine. I have the 24-hour movement. 24-hour movement is not for the faint of heart. It's very hard to read the minutes on this thing because you've got, and that's one of the problems with 24-hour dials, is that you've got markings in like confusing spots because there's an hour marking in between each hour marking every, so at 2.5 minutes, you've got these markings that are kind of in between the other ones. It's hard to do a 24-hour dial that's not super confusing. This one definitely is tough for me. I have some other 24-hour movements like the Glycine Airman that are very easy to read. This one is not very easy to read. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Vostok Kommandersky, very utilitarian bracelet on this thing. It is objectively not a good bracelet. I like it though. I really like the authenticity. I don't know, it's a funky watch, so I enjoy it personally, but it is low quality. That is undeniable. 15 millimeters thick. It really doesn't feel that thick, but it has a high domed acrylic crystal on it, which adds to the thickness. There's probably 2 of those millimeters is probably on the top there. And they have this crazy, the case back has an interesting technology. It's got the wobbly crown, all this sorts of stuff. Kommanderskys are beloved for for their quirks and how cheap they are. And I like a Kommandersky. I really like wearing this watch. It's extremely comfortable. But yeah, the loom is not good. Like at full power, it might look like this, but 20 minutes later, you're struggling to see it. So it's bad loom. Score 70. And now 82nd of the watches it's possible for me to recommend as a dive watch is the Islander Pogue ISL 149, $235, 43 millimeters in diameter and 200 meters water resistance. Again, with the loom, I'm sorry, did my best here. It has a full loom bezel. It does have a bezel insert on top. It looks like it's probably sapphire. I didn't write that down here, so don't quote me on it, but That's sweet if true. Got a Jubilee style bracelet that apparently does not have an extension on it. So that's why it's just recommended if you swap the straps, so swap that out or something, or you do you. There's no date on this. I think it'd be nice if it had a date at 6 o'clock or somewhere else, or at least an option to get a date version. That's the other thing you can do, because some guys don't want a date. That's fine. I think a date is very practical to have in every day. And if you watch the Field Watch video, the Field Watches got penalized for dates. But to me, a Field Watch is a pure tool watch, whereas a dive watch is a hybrid. It's an amalgam of a tool watch and an everyday watch. And it isn't to be taken so seriously. So I think a date is actually better on a dive watch. Reasonable thickness, I suppose. A little bit thick. Score 70. Now the 83rd watch that's possible for me to recommend under the scoring system is the Out of Order Casanova Anguria. They've got a ton of colors for this thing. $298, size of 44 millimeters, and water resistance of 100. This lume shot is not really casting it in that great of a light. You see they've got these gray indexes, and apparently the gray indexes don't glow very well. So lume is unimpressive. The whole thing with these out of orders is that they kind of scuff them up, so you don't feel bad if you scuff it up yourself. I think it looks really cool. It's only got 100 meters of water resistance, but that's fine. It's really fine. This one is quartz. Swiss movement. It's a Swiss quartz. It's a quartz watch. You get a nice negative display date. It's distinctive. I like that you've got the watermelon combination here. Pretty cool. Score 70. Next is the Lima Mecha Revolt. It's $295, 38 millimeters across, and 200 meters water resistance. There's no date on this thing. Very cool look here. I like the lightning bolt second hand. At first glance, it looked like a multifunction bezel, because you've got an inner and an outer, but there's on the outer ring it just says Mecha Revolt automatic 200 meters. I haven't seen another watch that does that, so they did something new. Are they going to start a new trend? No, nobody else is going to do this, but it looks cool on this one. Crown looks very strange. There's no grip on it, but there's also some kind of object here on the end that looks like it's straight on the round crown. I don't know how to describe that thing. There's no crown guards here, and this thing really sticks out. No lume on the second hand. That's one of the things that probably, if they had lume on the second hand, it'd be recommended. Again, kind of that skin diver case shape. Score 70. And here's a golden calf. Well, is it a golden calf or a brass calf? I don't know. The 84th watch it is possible for me to recommend, given my scoring system, is the Invicta Pro Diver. And oh my goodness, I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning. There's so many Invictas that are called Pro Diver that have vastly different appearance from this thing. But you can get this kind in so many colors. There's so many colors. There's probably more than I can even show here. But the thing is $80. It's 40 millimeters in size, and it's 200 meters water resistance. I owned one of these. You know, based on the scoring system, its specs alone, it says recommended. I do not recommend this watch. Look at how clean it looks on this product listing. Mine, you could see the scratches a mile away from what they did with the sandpaper when they put on the grains, like sandpaper from Home Depot, and you gave it to your 2-year-old to just go nuts on this watch. Whatever happens, that's, it was bad. There's a Cyclops here, not magnifying anything. I mean, the date window is slightly larger, but yeah, it's got an aluminum bezel insert. People think, okay, I'm spending less, but for the money, for the $80, I'm getting a decent watch. In my opinion, no, you're not. Save your $80. That's my opinion on this Invicta. No good. It's thick. It actually feels pretty thick. It feels so rough. It is finished so badly. The bracelet is hot garbage. Hot garbage. The bracelet is so bad. That's what I think about the Invicta. I would probably talk this passionately about other watches if I actually owned one at some point. I know the Invicta, I know it is no good. Despite what this says, I don't think you should get one if you have $80. Look at that lume. The lume is lousy on this thing. It is not good. The lume is bad. But you do you. If you love your Invicta, keep going with it. It does have mineral crystal. We saw earlier ones in this video that were cheaper than this that I think you're going to enjoy a lot better, that are a lot higher quality than this one. Score 70. Next is the Vaer Sea Turtle Bronze. And I don't recommend any of the ones after this point, so I'll stop harping on that. But yeah, next is the Vaer Sea Turtle Bronze, $159, 40 millimeters in diameter, and it's 100 meters water resistance. This is an actual brass bronze watch, brass or bronze. I don't know which. Cool border date window. Really cool pattern of lume on the dial. This is cool. It probably looks like this right when you charge up. I bet it fades pretty quickly. The honeycomb pattern, I bet that fades. I really like how this one looks. Very distinctive. Score 69. Next is the Vostok Amphibia 1967. 281 bucks, 42 millimeters, somewhere, 200 meters water resistance. I don't know where they measure the 42. It may be left to right here. It's probably not diagonal because, yeah, this is an interesting shape here. Kind of shrouded lugs, you know, covering where the strap attaches. You've got lume, good lume on the dial, it appears. The second hand is lumed. You can see it there by the 1 o'clock. And there's a lume pip on that bezel. Very distinctive looking. I think they make these in bronze as well. Is it bronze already? With Vostok, sometimes it's bronze even when it looks steel. Because they do bronze and then they chrome it. Because bronze is cheaper. Anyway, you can see the Marinome watermark here. So that's probably where it costs 281 bucks is on Marinome. It's got a sandwich dial. Very cool hour hand here with the two things. I don't know, a hamburger or something. Very interesting. Pretty thick, 15 millimeters thick. Score 69. And 96th out of 125 is the Bob Wilson Legion's 6. 249 bucks, 44 millimeters in size, 100 meters water resistance. It has a quartz movement. This bezel does turn, but all you get is this, is that W for Bob Wilson? I mean, it's a backwards N, but I don't know what that means exactly, but that's what you get. There's an anchor on the second hand. Very shiny brass that they did. It actually looks really cool. I like the numbers here. I like the style of this thing. 249 bucks seems like a little bit much. You're probably not gonna find another one that looks just like this. You'll see as we get lower scores, there's actually a lot of cool, unique things that we're gonna see that just aren't that great as a dive watch, but they look really cool. This is one of those ones. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's a horrible dive watch. You could use it for diving, obviously, but it's just not the best, I don't think, at fulfilling the multiple requirements of a dive watch. Score of 69. 97th place, Islander Root Beer ISL 152. 229 bucks, 38 millimeters in diameter, and 200 meters water resistance. The lume looks okay. Again, the Islander lume, you have to take it with a grain of salt because the colors are a little bit off on these Islander shots. Crown guards, dual time bezel with the gold paint, day date. Looks pretty cool. Score of 69. Next is the Aragon Sea Charger, 195 bucks, 44 millimeters in diameter, 200 meters water resistance. And this has a full lume dial. The bezel has full lume on it. You've got the green here. You know, a lot of Aragons have this green lume, this green paint that they use for their lume. I think that works with this one. Some of the designs, it doesn't look so good. This one looks pretty good. Red date window, little red ring on the crown. Very cool looking bracelet, unusual bracelet. This thing is 18 millimeters thick. That is very thick. I haven't said this in a while, but the average thickness is 13.3 for this water resistance rating, so 18 is a ton more. Quite thick. Score of 68. Next is the Aragon Hydromatic, 270 bucks, 44 millimeters, 200 meters water resistance. Elephant in the room, or the coolest thing about this thing, well, I mean, it's blue PVD. That looks really cool. The bezel looks really nice. The lime green dial is very distinctive. They do have a few other colors here, you know, blue, orange, white. This is a cuff, like it's spring loaded. You kind of, yeah, it doesn't attach. It's just held on with springs onto your wrist. So I would love to actually try this thing on and see what it feels like. Yeah, I don't know what it's calibrated to. Is it gonna feel really tight or really loose on my wrist? Who knows? You have to get it to find out. This one ticks one of the boxes on my pet peeve list, which is when there's no marks in between these 12 indexes. And there's no minute hashes. I call it minute hash marks. There's no minute hash marks in between these 12 markings. That drives me nuts. I know Panerai's been doing it for a long time. To me, it's artsy fartsy to a degree that I don't like. I want to be able to tell the time easily. It bothers me when there's no markings. The lume looks really nice on this bezel too. Score 68. And 100 out of 125 watches is the Marlin Mark IV Grand Marlin. Price of 208, 42 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. The lume shot is for the white dial version, but that shows you what the lume pattern is. It's standard dive lume. Second is loomed, as well as the other hands and the indexes, and then there's a loom pip. Standard dive loom. It's got a date. I really like, this is sort of like Breitling here with these, the colors and the fact that they've got the numbers here. It's reminiscent of Breitling. It's definitely thick. There's no bracelet extension on this, and it looks like one of these bracelets you can't swap out. Look at these lugs. Always something to keep your eye on if that's the case, because the bracelet doesn't look that nice, and you may want to swap it. Score 68. Next we have the Spinnaker Cahill, $325, 43 millimeters in diameter, 300 meters water resistance. You get this Mercedes hand. It's kind of oversized. The loom actually looks pretty good. Oh, weird, you don't see the Mercedes on here on the loom shot. I don't know why that is. But anyway, there's no loom on the bezel. It's a dual time bezel rather than a dive bezel. There's no crown guards. Score 67. In 102nd place is the Sterling Depthmaster Heritage. $279, 42 millimeters across, and 200 meters water resistance. Standard dive loom. No extension on this bracelet. You get a paragraph of text if that's what you like. Score 67. The Vostok Amphibia 570597. That bracelet is looking rough. Anyway, it's $150, 37 millimeters, and 100 meters water resistance. So, hey, if you like a 37, here you go. Another Marinome.com watermark here on the loom shot. You see that the second hand is loomed. You have this offset seconds over here. So it's going to be kind of a unique caliber, I assume. Unique movement in this thing. But oof, that bracelet is bad. Looks really weird. Pretty thin, 11.7 millimeters thickness. That's nice. Score 67. Next is the Hoosen Diver. $285, 39 millimeters across, and 200 meters water resistance. Cool case. Very cool case. This is a unique shape. I don't think I've seen anywhere else. The colors look really like washed out. I'm not a fan of this, whatever color this is, this kind of purple brownish color that's just faded to where it's nondescript. That's the only color you get. Is it taupe? Gray? I don't know. Gray, brown. You do get your military time on here. Based on the description, there's no loom on this bezel. I could not find a loom shot, so here's the loom pattern from the description, and the total score is 67. And in 105th place is Invicta Grand Diver 27751. I don't recommend this. If you want to watch that tells you that it's a Grand Invicta on the side, this is probably the only one for you. It's blue. That's really cool. I mean, if you're going to wear a wacky watch, I say just go for it. Go all in. $122, 47 millimeters, very big, 300 meters water resistance, 17 millimeters thick. The average for 300 meter water resistance is 13.7, so this has got 3.3 millimeters thicker than average. But look, they've got the atmospheric diving suit thing on here. This thing's hardcore according to that. Mineral crystal, that's kind of what you get on these Invictas. They're trying to cut all the costs. Second hand has no loom. It's just a needle. Score 66. And next we have the Nomad Devilfish in 106th place. $250, 48 millimeters somewhere, 200 meters water resistance. Very distinctive look on this thing. It looks really cool. I'm sorry, I can't remember what country it's from. But yeah, there's no second loom on this thing. There's no date. It says silicone or rubber strap. This picture is some kind of denim strap. 16.3 thickness, very thick. Score 64. And in 107th place is the Stalingrad Defender, $225, 45 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. If you like bronze watches, for whatever reason, the bronze watches are usually kind of at the bottom of the pack, score-wise. Even though bronze does better than steel, I think it gets 1 point over steel because of corrosion resistance. The weight of bronze is slightly more than steel, but it comes out the same score-wise. They both lose 2 points for weight. And the bronze loses 1 point for corrosion because it's not gold. You know, there's a better material that gets a 0 instead of a -1. But anyway, the bronze ones seem to get low. Oh, there's no minute markings. Oh, I didn't give it that penalty. In fact, I said, oh, it's got some numbers. So this could even be a lower score here because you're missing the minute markings. It does technically have a dive bezel, but what are you going to use it for? There's no markings on here. How do you know what you're timing? Yeah, I mean, there's 6 guesses, I guess, if you time something. So it's a little bit weird. Score 64. And in 108th place is the All-Time Courage. It's $301, 42 millimeters across, and 100 meters water resistance. And this is maybe the only aluminum watch. It's got an aluminum case. That's probably what it's called, All-Time. The Al is probably for aluminum. That's my guess. Interesting bezel here. It looks like there's no knurling on the outside. You've got these like bumps you've got 12 bumps around the edge or something. But it's a quartz watch, $300, and you've got this aluminum case. It does look pretty unique, kind of normal size, 42, but it's very thick. I don't know why it's so thick when it's a quartz, but they decided to make it thick. And it's only 100 meters water resistance, push-pull crown. So there's more questions than answers on this one. Score 64. Next we have the Nixon Stinger 44. $275, 44 millimeters across, and 100 meters water resistance. This is one of the ones I would categorize as dive style. 100 meters water resistance with push-pull crown, and then a quartz movement. It is a solar quartz, but it's sort of dive style. Doesn't mean it's a bad watch. You get a few different color options here. Just not the best dive watch. Score 64. Next is the Triwa Sub Ocean Plastic. This is the orange one. Hey, unique case there. $156, 40 millimeters across, 100 meters water resistance. It's a quartz. It's on this nylon strap, maybe made from ocean garbage or something. Lume looks really bad. You do get a date on this thing. The crown may or may not be plastic itself with metal colored paint on it or something. But yeah, no lume on the bezel, obviously. It's nice and thin though, 10.5 millimeters thick. That's nice. I think it's a bonus point for that. Score 64. In 111th place is the Timex Navi XL. $269, 41 millimeters across, 100 meters water resistance. It's got a push-pull crown per product listing. They don't advertise a push-pull, but they don't. If it doesn't say screw down, then you know why it's not saying that. It's because it's a push-pull. This is interesting. Of course, you know, the little cutout for the military time. Which of course, it only works right at then. You know, once it's 22:30, you're out of luck with that. It is kind of cool though to have the little window there. It's a unique element. No lume on this bezel, so again, it's kind of a dive style watch. Score of 62. In 112th place is the Invicta 1953. $128, 40 millimeters across, and 200 meters water resistance. This is a bit much for an Invicta. I think it's because this particular one, the 1953, people say, oh, this is the Invicta you want. There's no Invicta that I want. I don't want any Invicta. Actually, I take that back. They have a pocket watch. I would get the pocket watch for sure. I think it has a see-through case back so you can see how the pocket watch works. A hand-winding pocket watch. I would do something like that for sure. They've got some unique stuff in there. There's some other cool stuff Invicta does. This is not one of them. I would not go for this personally. But yeah, there's no date. You know, it's just based on the specs. There's no emotion involved here whatsoever. The taking everything this watch has to offer, it's not a recommend for me. There's no lume on the second, unless I'm misreading this. I cannot find a pip anywhere on here. 14.5 millimeters thick. It's not excelling, guys. Score 62. Next is the Aragon Hercules MD Bronze. $149, 50 millimeters in size, and 200 meters water resistance. Beautiful full lume dial there. There's no lume on this bezel. That might be one of the reasons. Well, there's a few reasons here. It's thick. It's heavy bronze. There's no crown guards. There's a lot of reasons, of course. There are always reasons, but I won't. I learned from the last one not to harp on the reasons why it gets a low score. It's not the best. Score 61. In 114th place is the Aragon M50. Price of $300. 50 millimeters in size, and 200 meters water resistance. This is my own personal lume shot here. This is what mine looks like in the dark. These tritium tubes are really cool. There's just one little lume pip here. I have to agree with the score though. It's not the best watch. I mean, I really like this thing. I'm really fond of this big watch. I actually don't even notice it's on when I wear it. It's interesting. It sounds like propaganda, but it's actually more comfortable than a lot of my smaller watches. The way that it's just rounded really well. There really aren't rough corners to it. Something about the weight just makes it kind of settle. I don't know. It feels nice. It is really big. It's incredibly heavy. I think it's 2/3 of a pound or maybe 3/4 of a pound. It is very heavy. It's got these nice crown guards. You've got lume on the crown. If that does anything for you, I always just even forget that's there, honestly. It doesn't catch my attention. not really looking at the crown while I'm wearing it, so I don't even really notice usually. But yeah, there's no extension on this bracelet. As I mentioned before, if it's too tight or too loose, I will adjust it using, a mechanical pencil. I'll just adjust it with that. I obviously have to take it off to do that. Yeah, score 61. Next we have the Fossil Dive Sports. It is 170 bucks, 42 millimeters across, 100 meters water resistance. It is a quartz. It has a push-pull crown. So again, this is like a dive style watch. The lume, I don't think that's an actual picture. I bet the lume's not very good. That's my guess. It is very thin, but that's kind of all it's got going for it. Well, okay, you get a date. You've got a nice little cyclops and stuff. There's probably other things going for it. I shouldn't write it off completely. Fossil Dive Sports, score 61. In 116th place is the Macara Sea Serpent. $279, 42 millimeters across, and 100 meters water resistance. I told you there's going to be some really cool looking watches down at the bottom. This is one of them. It doesn't have a rotating bezel. I don't know if that's the first one that does that. We'll see some more. It looks really cool. Pretty cool lume too. Score 60. In 117th place is the Timex Waterbury Dive. 179 bucks, 41 millimeters, and 100 meters water resistance. Internal rotating bezel with these crowns here. Now these aren't screw down crowns. So yeah, you can do this underwater. You can rotate the dive bezel underwater. So that's kind of nice actually. There's no lume on this inner rotating bezel, and according to the description, there are lumed hands and indexes. There's no date on this thing. It's a quartz. 179 bucks for a Timex quartz. I mean, Timex does kind of charge a lot lately, so I'm not going to say it's out of character for them to charge 179 bucks for a watch like this. It strikes me as priced too high. That's my personal opinion. 10 millimeters thick though, so it's a thin watch. Score 59. In 118th place is the Umyashov BP5. Boyevoi Plovyets BP. There's the date. Cool that they've got all these numbers here. Is that guy shooting a gun under the water? I don't know. I wouldn't advise shooting a gun under the water. I think there's pressure issues when you do that. Man, look at this crazy crown cover here. Oh, call it a crown lock. This is a crown cover. Subtle distinction, I guess, but yeah, it's got a little chain. You unscrew it, it comes off. Screw bars for the lugs instead of spring bars. That's interesting. Oh, how big is this thing? Oh, only 45. Only 40. I think there's ones that are like 60 and stuff. But look at how far out that crown goes. There's a few of these where they just want you to hurt your hand horribly on the crown or something. But it's got a score of 58. Next is the Stalingrad Iron Will. 99 bucks, 43 millimeters across, 100 meters water resistance. Hey, that doesn't cost much. This looks pretty distinctive for 100 bucks. It's only 100 meters with push-pull, so it's kind of a dive style more than a dive watch. But yeah, it's a quartz. I don't know. I think you get a lot of interesting looks for your 100 bucks if you go this route. Yeah, I mean, compare this to the Invicta. I think if you could choose the Stalingrad or the Invicta, I think you go with the Stalingrad. That's me personally. It's got more character. Yeah, the score is 57. In 120th place is the Slava Spetsnaz, a string of lots of numbers. Okay, 227 bucks, 44 millimeters across, and the water resistance is 100. You get a date here. That's nice. Very cool coat of arms here. Byzantine, I guess that's the Russian Empire or something. I forget exactly the two-headed eagle here with the crowns in its claws. Something to do with the Russian country. Score 56. In 121st place is the Liberum DMD. It's $286, 43 millimeters across, and it has a water resistance of 100 meters. Push-pull crown on this guy. They actually make the crown stick out farther than it ordinarily would. Yeah, the thing, okay, I know a little bit about it, I guess. You can swap out the case and the strap and kind of keep your same dial is the deal. It's liberating you from having to look at the same color. But unfortunately, it's all going to be this plastic thing. You know, whatever colors you change it out for, it's still this plastic thing, and the bezel doesn't rotate. I don't even know if it's really supposed to be a dive watch per se, but I included it anyway. But yeah, it doesn't do so well as a dive watch. Score 53. This is what I'm talking about. The Vodolaz CSS V. There's the VMF. This thing is $184. 58 millimeters. That, like I said, that is absolutely what I'm talking about. 58 millimeters. 700 meters water resistance. Okay, so this actually has a legitimate water resistance rating. Awesome. This is probably a 22 millimeter strap here. just to give you scale. I'm guessing that's what that is. The crazy cage thing protecting the crystal, that's cool. It's definitely cool. You have to admit it's cool. But what is this? Like, this is as wide as a strap. You have a 22 millimeter strap. You have a 22 millimeter sticking out crown thing. Like, what do you do with that? That is nuts. Oh man, look at this. 26.3 millimeters thick. We knew there'd be some thick ones, didn't we? And here it is, 26. I don't even know what 26 would feel like. That is crazy. Oh man. I've never shown you, like, okay, so we have these 3 sections of the scorecard: protection, utility, practicality. Practicality, it gets a 1 out of 30. That's interesting. I guess it would do worse if it was a quartz. It would definitely get negative numbers if it was a quartz. But yeah, this is wild. It's wild. This thing is something else. There's this YouTube guy called Nut and Fancy. He reviews firearms and stuff. And he has this thing he says, which is the rule of cool. And so no matter what it is, if you have something and you like it, and someone asks, why do you like it? And you just say, I don't know, it's cool. That trumps everything else. The rule of cool is, if you think it's cool, you do you, man. And that's how I feel about the watches too. Like, if you like it, go ahead. But yeah, this is it's a pretty crazy watch right here. Next, we have the Naval Watch Company FRX B002. 193 bucks, 38 millimeters across, 50 meters water resistance. The 50 meters really hurts it. It's a dive style with the push-pull crown. You know, they could have, yeah, water resistance 5 bar, even on the dial. They could have boosted it up. I don't know what the deal with this Naval Watch Company thing is. They make really cool looking watches, but the specs are like, what are we doing? But yeah, you get a cool date. You get a date here. The bezel looks nice. It just didn't score very well. Score 50. In 124th place is the S-Force Hyper Carbon White. $179, 50 millimeters across, 100 meters water resistance. This is a plastic case with some like metal hardware stuff going on here. Look at that tiny date on this humongous watch. Does this turn? Does the bezel turn? I believe so. Yeah, I put dive bezel here, so it must turn. But there's no lume on the indexes or the bezel. You only get lumed hour and minute. You don't get lumed second either. So I couldn't find a lume shot, but here's what it looks like. Apparently it's a rubber strap with like metal inside. Anyway, it's a quartz watch. S-Force actually does have some cool looking watches. They're all humongous watches. They pretty much only make 50 millimeters from what I understand. There's probably a cooler one I could have found. This may be the one that scored the best. But anyway, you can get it in red, white, and green. It's very thick too. Score 46. All right, and this is the last one. 125th out of 125 watches reviewed as dive watches is the Parchi Hodinky. 65 bucks, 36 millimeters across, and water resistance of 30 meters. It's available in a lot of colors. I'm not going to rant about it too much. I have strong feelings. Oh, this is an aluminum watch too, so there's more than one aluminum watch. There's no lume on this thing whatsoever. The thing that bothers me is that this is a watch to teach a kid how to tell the time. That's what they're marketing it as. And they decided to put a dual time rotating bezel on it. Like, it's got these huge bumps on it. The kid is going to play with it. They're going to want to rotate that bezel. But how's that going to help them tell the time if the 12 is over here or something? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So in the block watch, they made the bezel be like increments of time. Like, here's what 15 minutes looks like. You put it on the minute hand and you can see how long 15 minutes is as like a chunk of time or something like that. That's a very smart way to teach a kid how to visualize times in increments and like see. They can set it when you tell them we're going to leave in 10 minutes. They set the thing. They can see when the 10 minutes have passed. But what does this do? How could a kid use this at all? What kid is like tracking the time in Tokyo or something? It's just not happening. So and I think the thing that bothers me is that they're like, oh, we've designed a watch that's for children and it's affordable. And I shouldn't rag on them. They probably spent a lot of time and effort. And yeah, 65 isn't too much. It just bothers me when things don't work the way they're supposed to. When something doesn't match what it's designed to do. And I don't think they thought that through with having a dual time bezel for a kid. Based on the specs, it gets a score of a 21 out of 100 as a dive watch. And now for the top 10. Top 10 dive watches under $330. All right, and at long last, here's the top 10 dive watches under $330. In 10th place is the Redwood Tactical V3 Frogman. It's $199, size of 40 millimeters, and it has a water resistance of 200 meters. The biggest thing about this one, in my opinion, is the solar quartz. Quite thin, 11.2 millimeters thickness. Redwood did really well in the field watch videos. They seem to make, just specs-wise, a really solid watch. Field watches and dive watch, apparently. A ton of things loomed on here. The bezel's a little bit minimalist for my taste. I like to have individual minute marks, but it's capable. It's a capable dive watch. It has a score of 82. It's not the only solar quartz we'll see in the top 10. Solar quartz is really nice because it kind of marries some of the best features from both automatic and quartz movements. You get the accuracy of a quartz, but then you don't have the drawback of having to change the battery every few years. You know, the solar quartz has a longer interval where anything needs to be done. More similar to an automatic, so that's really nice. Score of 82. And in 9th place is the Deep Blue Diver 1000. You can't really talk about budget dive watches without mentioning this particular watch. This is sort of a legend in my mind for the budget dive watch. It's an original design. They kind of just do their own thing here, and they just make a nice quality dive watch at a reasonable price. For $150, 40 millimeters. It's a touch thicker than average. Average thickness for a 300 meter depth rating is 13.7, so this is, 1.3 millimeters thicker than average. Not crazy. Still within the realm of normal thickness for a dive watch. It's not totally crazy, but it is a bit thicker than normal. But yeah, you get these colors. I think there's more colors in this, but for sure these are color options that you can get from Deep Blue. Make sure to check on the bezel. If you're gonna order this one, make sure the one you're getting has the full lume bezel. That would be my advice, because I think they do have ones that don't have full lume bezel. Score of 82. In 8th place is another Deep Blue, the Deep Blue Day-Night Stealth Ops. Price of $270, 44 millimeters across, and 300 meters water resistance. This one, I really wanted this one for a while when it first came out. Once I saved up enough money to buy it, I kept looking on their website over and over again. Eventually, I just I lost patience. I wanted the blue one because I don't have the full rainbow, but I wanted a set of rainbow color divers. I wanted this for the blue one, but I ended up going with the Citizen Whale Shark instead. But yeah, it's nice. It has a forged carbon case. We haven't seen very much of that, and I don't think there's all that many dive watches with forged carbon case, but it is really nice. It's lightweight. Forged carbon is it's like a plastic, but it's much stronger. Forged carbon is actually, it can be, depending on how it's made, forged carbon can have a higher tensile strength than steel. It's not cheap to make. Forged carbon is kind of a premium. The reason to get this one is for that tritium. This looks really nice. I've had T100 before, and it is so breathtaking. These flat tubes are a sight to behold. The blue ones especially. I actually haven't seen the yellow flat tubes, but I'm sure they look really good too. I have yellow tubes like these on the Aragon, and those look really good. Yeah, tritium is amazing. And you get a tritium pip here as well. That's kind of nice. Sometimes they choose to do traditional lume on the pip and then tritium on the inside. I like that you've got a tritium pip here. Score of 82. And in 7th place is the Octopus Kraken Octibu Classic Diver OCQ06. Price of $315. 40 millimeters across, 300 meters water resistance. Great lume on this. Very thin at 11 millimeters. This is an homage of the 50 Fathoms, the Blancpain. You've got the red markings here. I don't know if 50 Fathoms has this kind of retro look right now. You probably can get one that looks like this from Blancpain. It seems like a fine watch. I would definitely look at a review or something, because $315 does seem like a lot to me. It seems more than a lot. Normally you pay $100 or less for these kinds of Chinese homage watches. So to justify $315, it better be really, really good. But of course, in terms of the score, the price doesn't really come into it. And of course, okay, so at the very end of the video series, I factor that in. The affordability comes into play. And other factors come into play too. There's no way that a watch like this would end up in the final top 10. It couldn't happen because there's no brand heritage, and yeah. But the lume looks really nice on this. I love the sapphire insert on the bezel. Those always look good. Score of 83. In sixth place is the Vaer DS4 Meridian Tactical Solar. $259, 42 millimeters across, and 200 meters water resistance. It irks me that the bezel is loom, has like these missing parts of loom, these vast gulfs in between. So they didn't put loom on the numbers. I wish they had. I don't like that. And as I mentioned before, I like to have the individual minutes marked. It's more useful of a timing bezel if you have those on there. You can kind of use the marks on the dial itself to figure out the time. It's not a huge deal, but I just like it on the bezel as well. It makes it a lot easier. This is another solar quartz. You get the best of both worlds with that solar quartz, and it's got a total score of 83. In fifth place is the Citizen ProMaster Dive BN0169. It's $300, size of 44 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. I chose probably the loudest color combo here. They have more muted and just normal color combinations. Chose the Broncos colors. This might be good if I want to get a Broncos watch. This might be a good choice for me. But yeah, it's a solar quartz. Tons of solar quartz in the top here. You know, in the higher price tiers, that's not necessarily the case because you have things like chronometers and stuff, and they've got all these cool complications. So the solar quartzes are kind of just dominating this lowest price category. But yeah, you've got pretty much average thickness, a little bit, just a shade under the average thickness for the 200 meter depth rating. It does have a mineral crystal, which you see a lot with Citizen. For dive watches, I think sapphire is better, but mineral isn't the end of the world. It's not a big deal. The loom looks really good on this. It's still just kind of a standard dive loom pattern. There's no markings on the bezel. But I do like that it does have all 60 little dots here. And I like how they did it. Sometimes with the numbers, they chop off these markings. I like that you get all of them all the way around. That really makes it more useful of a tool. And as far as the design, I don't think it detracts from it in any way. So the other cool thing about this one is it's got a little bit less wacky hands and indexes. Sometimes Citizen just does weird things. These are looking kind of a normal size and shape, and it's definitely Citizen hands we got going on here. They like to do this. Like a stained glass segmented hand here. They like to do that. Score of 83. And in fourth place is the Ionder ISL 61. It is $299, size of 43 millimeters, and 200 meters water resistance. Full loom dial. As I've said before with these Islander photos, these Islander loom shots are taken in a room that's like only slightly darkened, so it's hard to get a good loom shot. I think this thing probably looks really good when the lights are all the way off, but I couldn't find a loom shot where they had the lights all the way off, but you know, you get the idea. I said before, I love black hands, and you really don't see them very often because where do you put the loom when you have a fully black hand? So you pretty much only see that on a full loom dial, and I think it looks really nice. Apparently this one does have a bracelet extension. A lot of times the Islanders don't. If anyone is considering a budget dive watch, I think Islander deserves to be considered. So I'm glad that there's one in the top 10. You know, I set up this scoring system not really knowing what the results would be exactly. It's not like I designed the scoring system to make sure an Islander made it to the top 10 or something. So I'm glad the Islander made it to the top once I just plugged in what all the specs were with the weightings that I assigned based on the philosophy of a dive watch. Score of 84. And in third place is the Scurfa Diver 1 D1 500. $315, size of 40 millimeters, and this is a 500 meter water resistance. It's actually the highest that we have in the top 10. The only one that's this high, the rest are 300 or 200. But yeah, this one is titanium. It's a quartz, just a regular old quartz, so you'll need to change that battery out every once in a while. The guy who started Scurfa, that's his last name. I forget his first name, but Scurfa is a diving instructor, and so he made a dive watch. And these things seem to sell out very quickly. Anytime I've looked at them, like half their things are sold out. I don't know if that's because people love these watches or they just don't make enough of these ones, but it's something to be aware of with this particular watch. The dial looks really nice. This is beautiful. And the other colors look really good too. I see why this one sells out. It's just a classic look to it, but it's also not really copying anything blatantly. It looks like its own thing. For the 500 meter depth rating, this is actually totally average, 14.4. Technically, the average is 14.5. In this entire video series, there's 47 watches that had 500 meters, and the average thickness among those 47 watches was 14.5. So this is like right along with that average. Seems like an excellent choice. Score of 84. In second place is the Yelang V1213S. Price of $201, size of 44 millimeters, and water resistance of 300. Here's another tritium watch. I don't know if the pip is tritium. It looks like traditional loom, actually. If I was a betting man, I would bet on it being traditional loom. But you get your military time, you get your day and your date. There are different colors. There's blue, green, and yellow, but it's just for the countdown section and maybe the second hand here. All three colors have this gray-black wave dial. I don't care for that wave pattern. That's one thing I don't like about this one. I like the case. I like the stencil numerals on the bezel. The whole thing looks nice to me except for that dial. I'm not a fan of the dial, but I think the size is pretty good. Per the product listing, there's no extension on that bracelet, so you're kind of wedded to whatever size you set with your micro adjustment. Here's another solar quartz, which I really like solar quartz personally because I don't have to change the battery. I know there's a service interval. I'll have to run into that when the solar quartz watches are dying or whatever, but yeah, at least for now, solar quartz seems like the way to go. Score of 87. And in first place, the best dive watch under $330 is the Momentum SQ30 Eclipse. $288, 42 millimeters in diameter, and 300 meters water resistance. You get a full loom bezel. The loom looks pretty good. It looks okay. I'm not going to say it's the best loom on the planet. This is a little bit dim looking. It comes on this kind of strange silicone NATO strap. I'm not a fan of silicone, personally. I've tried a bunch of silicone straps, and they always bother me. They kind of stick to my wrist. I think it has to do with if people like their watch to remain absolutely still on the wrist, or if they want it to have some movement to it. And I like it to move a little. So silicone in general just kind of, it doesn't feel good to me. I like, if it's feeling a little stuffy, I like to be able to shake it and feel it move. So the silicone bothers me. So if I got this watch, I would swap that out immediately. I would get rid of the silicone NATO and just put something else on it, a nylon two-piece strap or a nylon NATO or something like that. I generally don't like to put leather on a dive watch because I like the ability to be able to help my kids out of the bath and not worry about the leather getting messed up or whatever, not have to take the watch off. I mean, I love leather straps. They feel really nice, but I don't want to ruin them with the water. So that's the dilemma one finds themselves in when you're trying to have a comfortable dive watch. Yeah, it's a solar quartz and gets a score of 93. The only one to crack the A grade in the sub 330. But yeah, that's it. Those are the top 10. I'll go back and let you see the bottom 5. Here's the bottom 5. And then here's the top 5. These are the top 10, in my opinion. Top 10 conventional. Yeah, this is a little bit of a bonus section. A little bit of a story time. On the 6th video, I take these scores and I adjust them heavily. I do like brand heritage. I do all these different things to adjust it. I covered this earlier in the video. But anyway, the point is, the top 10, when I got my final result for top 10 at the very end of this video series, I noticed there's some really big watches, there's some really funky watches, and it just entered my head, like, this is sort of an enthusiast top 10. This is like the whole point is like, this is what I think is the best dive watch. That's, what else could I say? But what does Ben think is the best dive watch? But I realized other people don't necessarily like a huge watch, and I saw some value in doing a more conventional top 10. So for each one of these price ranges, I have Ben's top 10, like Enthusiast top 10, then I have a more conventional top 10. And by conventional, I just mean like conventional size. So anything over 40 millimeters gets heavily penalized. And anything over 12 millimeters in thickness also gets heavily penalized. So it's bringing up like really conventional sizes. It's really shifting the weights on this to make the really smaller watches kind of take higher prominence. The other thing I did was also give a bonus to automatics, just an extra bonus to all automatic movements, because I realized that from the conventional perspective, automatic movements are preferred. Anyway, so where we're at is that there's two top 10s. There's the Enthusiast top 10 and the conventional top 10. Those aren't perfect words to describe these things, but Ben's top 10 and what I think other people would choose as their top 10. But again, it's still based on scores. But let me show you. Here they are. In 10th place is the Deep Blue Diver 1000. We already saw this one, but here's a different color, more of a conventional color instead of that bright yellow. I try to do more conventional colors as well on this thing. In 9th place is a new one, Revelo Hex Mariner. Remember, it's got that full lume dial, looks really nice. So it's interesting to see something a little newer. 42 millimeters, 13 millimeters thickness. In 8th place, the Tactical Frog Diving Watch V4, Tudor Pelagos FXD homage. 42 millimeters, 13 thick. So that's your 8th place. That wasn't in the top 10 before. And next, in 7th place, is that Scurfa Diver 1. We did already see this one just a moment ago. In 6th place is the Proxima PX 1703. This made it to the top 10 this time. This is due to its very thin size, 11.5, and 39 millimeters across. So I think that will please people who like the more conventional route here. In 5th place is the Vaer DS4 Meridian. We already saw this in the Enthusiast top 10, but here it is again. In 4th place is the Aragon Evo, $165, 40 millimeters, 500 meters water resistance, and 13 millimeters thick. Yeah, this wasn't in the top 10, the Enthusiast top 10, but it's in the conventional. So this is 4th place. Beautiful full lume bezel here, very nice looking. And in 3rd place, another new one, the Aquatico Dolphin, $299, 38 millimeters, ton of colors here, and 300 meters water resistance. Lume appears to be sort of its weak spot, but other than that, and you know, maybe the lume is great. Check out a review if you're at all interested in the Aquatico Dolphin. But yeah, from a conventional perspective, this is a great option. The 38 millimeters didn't give it any bonuses in the traditional scoring, but in here, it allowed it to kind of excel. And I know that people do like those 38 millimeter dive watches. So this is an option for you, especially, you know, under $330. Average thickness here, that got 3rd place. The top 2 were also in the other top 10 list, but we've got in 2nd place Redwood Tactical V3 Frogman. We saw that one, that gets 2nd place on this list. And in 1st place, the same 1st place on the other one, Momentum SQ30 Eclipse. It was already a very wearable size of 42 and 12.6 millimeters thick. So that retains the top spot. No matter how you slice it, I think this is going to please a lot of people. So those were the top 10 conventional dive watches. And that's it for the watch portion of this video. If you've watched my other videos, you know that I always like to go into Bible time. I like to talk about the Bible after I've talked about the watches. So that's what I'm going to do now. It's Bible time. I'm not a pastor or a biblical scholar or anything. I just love to talk about the Bible. It's really why I do these videos. I know there's some chance somebody's going to hear something about the Bible and it'll possibly touch their lives. Just that possibility is the whole reason I do all of this. But anyway, today I'm going to talk about the model prayer. So this is from Matthew 6, verses 5 through 13, and Luke chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. And the model prayer is sometimes called the Lord's Prayer. But if we take Jesus' life as an example and we're trying to live like he did, then it's clear that prayer should be a central part. There's all kinds of times he went off to go pray for a day or whatever. Spent a ton of time in prayer. It's always interested me, like, why did Jesus need to do that? He is God. He's one person of the three-person Trinity of God. And so why does he need to pray at all? He spent a ton of time in prayer in the Bible. And the Bible has recorded a few of the actual prayers that he prayed. For example, sometimes he would pray a psalm. He would just quote a psalm as a prayer. I mean, when he's on the cross, he prays, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? That's from a psalm. He's praying a psalm. That's a fulfillment of a prophecy, but there's a lot of other examples of him and the disciples praying psalms. But the most famous of Jesus's recorded prayers is the model prayer, also called the Lord's Prayer. Interestingly, he starts off by telling his disciples, don't make a show of your praying. Don't pray just to be seen by others. Like, go home and do it in the closet. And then he says also, don't use vain repetitions. People who think that God will hear them just because they say a ton of words. He says God actually knows our needs before we even ask them. This idea of just saying a prayer over and over and over again, that is not biblical. Jesus specifically tells us not to do that. That's not a way you should pray. He made it very clear that you shouldn't be praying, just reciting something over and over. That's why I and others call this the model prayer rather than the Lord's Prayer. Because Jesus literally says, pray after this manner. He doesn't say, pray these exact words and repeat them and memorize them and just say them every day. He doesn't say that. He says, pray after this manner. And I've noticed, because I do, sometimes I have some prayers memorized, and sometimes I will recite them. And there is value in that because it gets me to think along those lines of the prayer. And obviously, Jesus prayed the Psalms. The key is vain repetitions, just repeating the same prayer over and over. That doesn't make a ton of sense. There has to be like off-the-cuff, improvised prayers to God. But at the same time, it should follow kind of a prescriptive format. Jesus says, pray after this manner. So what are the elements of prayer? What is Jesus telling us are the main ingredients? If I can pray the way Jesus wants me to, it will be more aligned with how Jesus prayed, and therefore how God wants me to pray. So I don't remember where I learned this from exactly, but the model prayer can be broken out in these 5. Actually, before I do this, I'm just going to read the model prayer. Okay, so here's the full section. And when thou prayest, thou shalt not be as the hypocrites are, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and in the corners of the streets, that they may be seen of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou prayest, enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret. And thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. But when ye pray, use not vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they shall be heard for their much speaking. Be not ye therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye have need of, before ye ask him. After this manner therefore pray ye, Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. For if ye forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if ye forgive not men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Interesting that the prayer comes with a warning there at the end. Forgive others, or God's not going to forgive you. But anyway, so here's the list. Number 1 is worship. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hallowed means holy. So worshiping God. Holy is your name, Lord. That's a component of prayer. Second, surrender. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Not my will, but God's will. Third, provision. Give us this day our daily bread. Lord, give me what I need. Provision. Number 4, forgiveness. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And as I covered with the warning at the end, it's very simple. If I want God to forgive me, I need to forgive others. And 5, petition. Lead us not into temptation. Interesting, it doesn't say lead me not into temptation. I'm supposed to be praying for everybody. I pray that all of us would not be led into temptation. So here are 5, and I didn't come up with this list. There are a lot of other prayer lists that people come up with. So when you're praying, it's like tick the boxes. Make sure you do all these things. Here's 5. Those 5 are good. Another list I've heard of is called ACTS, and that is adoration, contrition, thanksgiving, and supplication. So adoration matches up with that first one, the worship. Adoration and worship, sure, those are kind of the same thing. Okay, next one, contrition. Father, forgive me for I have sinned. That kind of goes along with the forgiveness part. Although Jesus doesn't, you don't just ask, hey, God, forgive me. God, forgive me as I'm forgiving others. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. So we're supposed to forgive others as well. That's part of it. It's so important. Jesus said, when you pray, when you ask for God's forgiveness, this has to be included. And there's a warning at the end. It's heavily stressed that it's not just like, okay, I've sinned and Lord, forgive me. Well, others have sinned against me too, and it's my responsibility to forgive them. And then number 3, thanksgiving. This sort of goes along with provision. So thank you, God, for all the wonderful things you've given to me. It's sort of the same as give us this day our daily bread. In fact, in Jesus' model prayer, it's not as heavily stressed, this need to thank God for all he's given us. He kind of just he can tell that we're appreciative, whether we're appreciative or not. But then the last one of Acts, supplication, asking God for things. It's interesting. So supplication kind of fits in with that petition. Lead us not into temptation. So what was the odd one out? Acts only has 4, and then the Lord's Prayer has 5. Well, the one that seems to be left out is surrender. Thy will be done. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. I've noticed that's something that I've seen others miss in their prayers, and I forget a lot of times too, is to say, Lord, whatever your will is, let it be so. Whatever you want to happen, that's my prayer as well. I want your will to be done, Lord. It's incredibly important because a lot of times my will is not aligned with God's will. a lot of times my will is kind of separate from God's will. So it's important that these align. And I don't always know what God's will is, but I can at least pray, God, whatever your will is, I pray that it would be done in this situation. If I am in error, if I am deviating from your will, please put a barrier in my path. Please guide me back on the right path so that my will is aligned with yours. It's not always easy to pray for God's will to be done. I'm selfish, I have my own wants, but that's part of the point of the prayer, is that I ask for these things. There's this saying, take the action and the feelings will follow. And there is an element to that with the prayer and that's one reason it is nice to actually memorize a prayer, because if you memorize a prayer, then you're going to go through all those things. I think Jesus' warning about vain repetitions really has to do with, it's not the words coming out of the mouth that is important. It's the thoughts in my head. And so if I'm just reciting things mindlessly and it's just words coming out of my mouth, it doesn't do anything. God doesn't need to hear that prayer. He's heard it millions of times throughout history. He doesn't need to hear people repeating it over and over. The prayer is something that's supposed to help me. That's the point of the prayer. I'm not helping God by praying. Me worshiping God helps me. It puts me in the right mindset, that sort of thing. So that's the point of the prayer, is to help me to be more aligned with God's will. That's all I have on the Lord's Prayer, or the model prayer. If you want better biblical analysis, I've got 4 pastors that I highly recommend listed in the description. That's all I had. So now I'll close with a prayer. God, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share your word. I pray that this would impact people's lives positively, maybe people who aren't even Christian or anything, that they would learn how to pray and that they would develop a relationship with you. And I pray they would someday be saved. And Lord, I pray for your blessings on everyone who's watching this. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace always and in every way. The Lord be with you all. See you next time. And